In the middle of the speech, her eyes turned to Yin Moli, and the light at the bottom of her eyes flickered. Your Second Highness has always been very far-sighted. What's your opinion? When Yin Beicheng heard the speech, he went to one side and sat down. He was very agitated and lay on the table. Yes, it's not enough for me to accompany the beauty all day. I don't have time to go there. I really have a headache. Yin Mo Li's face did not change. He said speciously, Su Shi's brother's achievements in Wujuan a few days ago are known by his father. He wants to see his brother's ability. I don't know what I can do. Yin Beicheng immediately cried bitterly. The last thing was not the king's good luck, and the princess was smart. This time I want the king to be the deputy commander, but it's not the king's life. Second brother, you have to save the king. Brother Huang, it's not a fatal thing. How can it be so serious? Yin Mo Li shook his head, quite a little disapproval. The flower eyes on the street shimmered and said in a soft voice, Your Highness doesn't know. The Lord is used to idling in ordinary days. The affairs of Yuzhou are all handled by others. There's really no research on these. It's not too much to say that it's necessary to save lives for such an important thing in Lanshang now. After a pause, her willow eyebrows slightly frowned. She was distressed and worried. Second Highness, you are the commander-in-chief. I still need to rely on you for this trip. I hope you can talk more about it. Yin Beicheng immediately nodded beside him like a pound of garlic. What the princess said is what I think in my heart, second brother. When it comes to the back, there's a kind of begging tone in his words, and his face is full of bitterness and hatred. It can be seen that he is really worried. It seems that he is just a waste, just like the rumor. Yin Mo Li Mao Guang quietly looked at Yin Beicheng's eyes and saw that his eyes were clear, not like camouflage. He just gently pulled his lips and gave a faint smile. Brother Huang, our palace and you are close relatives. If you are really distressed, our palace will not sit back and ignore you. After a pause, he pondered for a moment, as if thinking bitterly. The remaining 5,000 scattered soldiers of our palace will soon be able to make peace with our palace. I heard that Yuzhou has 30,000 soldiers, so the emperor's younger brother might as well send out 10,000 directly and march into Wanzhou together. At that time, you just need to follow our palace in the rear. If there's soldiers going, our palace is coming to make plans. I think those chaotic people will not be able to make it. If you resist, you will be defeated at this point. And Mo Shanghua just roughly guessed the pass, and she could not help sneering in her heart. It turned out that he wanted to fight Yuzhou's soldiers and horses. He had many previous calculations, but he was really good at fighting step by step. Thinking about this in her heart, she said, I'm an ordinary woman, but if I need to, I'll do my part. As she spoke, her quiet eyes looked at Yin Mo Li and looked at him for a moment, as if she wanted to convey some message. Yin Mo Li naturally understood the meaning of the flowers on the street. His eyes were deep, but he didn't seem to see anything on his face. He was still polite and polite. The Lord of the Princess, I don't think I'm qualified to be here. They were quietly speaking some secret words. In the eyes of Yinbei City, they became strangers and talked with other men. Suddenly, they were jealous. They stepped up uncontrollably and stood in the middle of them. How can you just say something that the king doesn't understand? What's the point of not transferring troops? The king doesn't know. Or did he call General Mo? Come on. But General Mo Jiang Mo, who has been guarding Yuzhou for many years. Yin Mo Li picked his eyebrows slightly, with a curious look on his face. Yin Beicheng nodded and ordered people to go down and invite Mo Jiang. Fong said, Brother Huang really knows everything. Even the generals of this small town know it. If you put these words on others, you have ulterior motives. But now when you put them on Yin Beicheng, they can only be regarded as unintentional words. Yin Mo Li naturally can't care. He just smiles modestly and has nothing else to do. Yin Beicheng's people usually don't look very reliable. At this time, they're still quick. Soon, they invite Mo Jiang over. Naturally, this kind of occasion is not suitable for Mo Hua to participate in, but she naturally did not want to miss such an occasion, so she hid in a thin curtain. Mo Jiang has been stationed at the border for many years, but he is not as handsome as many people think. On the contrary, he has a pretty face. His skin is not as white as that of a rich man. He has a healthy wheat color. Although he is not so murderous, he has a calm atmosphere and is tall and strong. If he really wants to be compared with the white face of a middle and small school in Beijing, he is more beautiful charm. The flowers on the street can't see clearly through the curtain. Only a tall figure can be seen. After coming in, Yin Moli kneels down on one knee, facing Yin Beicheng. His deep voice comes from behind the curtain. Finally, he will see the Lord and his second highness. Get up. Yin Beicheng waved his hand impatiently, and then turned his eyes to Yin Moli. Brother Huang, this is General Mo. If you have something, just tell him. Having said that, he didn't ask Mo Jiang to obey Yin Moli's arrangement. In this way, he left a way back for himself. Yin Moli saw this, just nodded slightly, and then directly handed the imperial edict to Mo Jiang. This is the imperial edict of my father. Please have a look at General Mo. Mo Jiang used to look puzzled. Now, when he saw the imperial edict, his face suddenly became solemn, and he bent slightly. The emperor had an edict, and he would go through fire and water, and he would not give up. It's too serious to say that. General Mo only needs to obey military orders these days. Yin Moli stepped forward to help the people up in person and said, Now, we need to know the specific number of troops stationed in Yuzhou, as well as the situation of troops and horses. We need to collect all these information one by one. Let's talk about them one by one. Although he said that Mo Jiang was also under the command of Yanbei City, he looked up at Yanbei City and saw that he was lowering his head and pouring tea. He looked like he had nothing to do with himself. He just said, Yes, Your Highness, Rongbing. The whole territory of Yuzhou now has 320,400 elite troops, which are scattered all over Yuzhou. As for troops, horses, grain, and grass, Yuzhou is not rich, but these are all in supply. Yin Mo Liwen's speech can't help but gently nod. Mao Guang quite appreciate looking at Mo Jiang. Mo General is worthy of garrison for many years. Don't want to prepare to be able to question and answer like Flo. Mo Jiang's head is slightly drooping, but his back is straight. These are the duties of the last general. If you can't remember them, it's wrong. Not humble, not overbearing, good. Yin Moli praised in his heart, then stood up and said, Back to the point, you have seen the imperial edict. The rebellion in Anzhou is urgent. More importantly, they reached Yuzhou a few days ago. We can't wait for General Mo to listen to the order. He suddenly said, Our hall orders you to dispatch 8,000 elite soldiers from all parts of Yuzhou and integrate them with our 5,000 scattered soldiers meeting in 3 miles outside Yuzhou tomorrow afternoon, and then set out with our hall and the emperor's younger brother to settle the chaos in Anzhou. Remember, there is no amnesty for all those who escape halfway. I will obey you. Mo Jiang knelt down on one knee, slightly lowered his head, straightened his back, and raised his voice a few degrees, especially with posture. So good, so good. Yin Beicheng, who had been staying leisurely for a long time, came forward with no comment. It is obvious that such a lazy attitude is full of the belief that a nobleman's son who only knows how to eat, drink, and play every day is true. Mo Jiang had been used to Yin Beicheng's attitude for a long time. Seeing that he didn't have any opinions, he said, Since the Lord has no orders, the general will leave first and go back to make good preparations. Yin Mo nodded slightly, and then his eyes fell on Yin Beicheng again. Tomorrow you want to go out with you. Go back to clean up. Mention this matter. Yin North City complexion immediately again bitter come down. Wan Yin of answer away. Yes, this king knew. He was about to turn around and go out, but Mo Shanghua came out of the inner room at this time. He blessed Yin Mo slightly and said, I heard that the mob was very cruel and insidious. Even His Highness had been caught in their plan before. The Lord went alone. I'm really worried. I hope His Highness will allow me to accompany him. After a pause, she said, My medical skills must be known to all of us. At that time, we can also help in the army. Yin Moli didn't answer her immediately. Her tone was slightly raised, with some doubts and envy. I heard that the princess seemed to have some trouble with her brother recently. I didn't expect that the princess was still so concerned about her brother now. It's really enviable. Yin Beicheng's smell speech. Directly it will emo Shanghua in his arms, full of smile mouth. Husband and wife, this is like this bed coral bed end, and the fun is natural. Emo Shanghua eyebrow heart tiny can't check of light see you for a while, but still resisted in the heart want to brush open his hand of impulse. Cooperate of tiny hook lip a smile. Yin Mo Li Mao Guang sweeps from the two people's intimate posture, eyes colors slightly deep. Emperor younger brother and sister-in-law are so affectionate. How can this temple not become the beauty of people? Sister-in-law, if really want to go, then go. He had long guessed that Mo Shanghua would go, and he didn't intend to refuse. Now Mo Shanghua proposed, so he would not refuse. Yin Beicheng was like a child who had got candy. He was so happy that he made Hualan tighter. In this way, the king took the princess back first. Said, holding the flowers on the road will go out. Flowers on the road is also with the nest in his arms to accompany her out. Not long after they left, Yin Moli's bodyguard came in and saluted him. Your Highness, 5,000 elite soldiers have arrived 30 miles outside Yuzhou City. Do you want to move on? The movement is so slow. It seems that they're slacking off again these days when our hall is away. Yin Mo's face was expressionless. It seemed that his words of blame were just floating in his mouth. People couldn't guess for a moment whether he was happy or angry. The bodyguard was so nervous that he could not help but droop his head and dare not speak. Sure enough, Yin Mo's eyes flashed in the next second and soon recovered as usual, saying, let them wait there. The Japanese Hall of the Ming Dynasty will lead the soldiers to make peace with them. In addition, the left vanguard who led the 5,000 people will be punished for 3 months. Yes, I'll tell you now. The bodyguard sighed for the striker in his heart and answered in a loud voice, half a point without taboo. Both the master and the servant seemed to forget that this is King Yu's mansion, a place with ears and walls. However, it's not that they're not afraid. It's just that these things have been exposed, and there's no need to cover them up. When Yin Beicheng sent Mo Shenghua back to the dockyard with such a close attitude, the whole house suddenly changed its attitude towards Nanha, and the people immediately began to speculate, for fear that they might miscalculate their fate and end up in a bad future. At that time, when they arrived in the dockyard, they dismissed the people, leaving only 2 of them for convenience. The house was silent for a long time, but Mo Shanghua just opened her mouth and broke the silence. I'm afraid that this incident came too quickly. It's not the emperor's whim, but the plan for many days. Now the purpose is clear. Nature can't be a whim. Because a few days ago, Yin Beicheng had already exposed some of her original temperament in front of Mo Shanghua and knew that she had already known his identity. At this time, the appearance of a dissolute child disguised as usual was faded. I'm afraid you don't know that although he ostensibly came to pacify the mob this time, in fact, only his soldiers and horses were in Anzhou before. As for himself, he went to the wrong place. This poison is the price he paid when he went to the wrong place. The color of his eyes is quiet, and his thin lip has no radiance. It's like a coal machine. It's very different from ordinary times. It's the dandy King Yu's dress, but his face looks like a cloaker. It's the first time that I've seen the flowers on the street in Yanbei City. I can't help but feel strange and complicated. How many faces does he have? However, in the end, what is important in front of her is just for a moment. The next second, Mo Shanghua returns to normal, and her eyes are also serious. Where did she go, and what's her purpose? After a pause, Mo Shanghua seemed to realize that it was inappropriate for him to be so directly afraid, and then said he dared to leave the army to calm down the people in Anzhou quietly, risking such a crime of bullying the king, and quietly went to other places. The purpose must be not simple. Only if you understand it with me. Can you guess its real purpose? Yin Moli is very deep in the city. To fight with him is to be with wolves. She has to think deeply. I thought that most of Yan Beicheng would not talk about it in detail, but I never thought that Yan Beiqing was just calm. When she finished speaking, she opened her mouth, and two simple words jumped out of his mouth. Jiangjun. Jiangjun. The flower eyebrow tip lightly picks. The facial expression does not understand. Seeing this, Yin Beicheng continued to explain in a low voice. Jiangjun is a branch camp of our secret guard camp, which is rich in iron industry. All the weapons used in the secret guard camp are produced from there, which is a decisive place. After a pause, his good-looking phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a kind of cool color in his eyes. It's so dark, but on the surface, it's just an ordinary place, but it's more iron ore than other places. Unexpectedly, he was staring at him and plotting with the local sheriff to rob the iron ore and many iron shops. This kind of behavior is intolerable. Secondly, if Yin Moli noticed any clues when he was really fighting for the design, he would follow suit and expose the secret guard camp. Then it would be even more serious. However, such an important thing is not extremely confidential. Yin Beiqing actually told her. Mo Shanghua was stunned and looked at Yin Beicheng, who was in front of him. He couldn't believe it. Wait, this matter is so important. How can you talk to me so easily? You're not a good person. You're not afraid that I'll calculate you when I know it? In the past, I would have thought about that. Yin Beiqing looked at the eyes of Mo Shanghua, which were as clear as lacquer and ink. At the moment, Mo Shanghua seemed to be just a thin layer of performance. It was very easy to see the sincere inside through this performance. Now, I know it's what you know. You will never do that. All of a sudden, the flower eyes on the street seemed to explode a faint light, and the heart also followed the inexplicable light tremor, which was really shocked by his words. Then why do you believe me so much? Speaking, her eyes involuntarily fell on Yinbei City. Her palms slightly tightened, but she didn't realize it. She was full of answers from Yinbei City. Yin Beicheng also looked at her, serious. Eyes faintly congealed some lingering feelings. With you as my wife, I am your husband. In this world, there should be no one more intimate than you and me. Therefore, I will naturally believe in you, love you, and protect you all my life. At this moment, Mo Shanghua only felt that her heart, which had been pressed down by the boulder these days, suddenly relaxed. The boulder broke, and her heart rose to the sky with great joy. The whole body was clear and relaxed. As for those beside, the ruddy lips of the flowers on the street pressed down the feeling of being ready to move in my heart. In the end, I didn't ask about Nanha, but said, "May my heart be like yours." She only thought that if Yin Beicheng thought about the matter of Nanha, he would take the initiative to say it. Now if he doesn't say it, she won't ask. As long as he has the heart, he will tell her all about it in the future. However, she forgot that if this matter had been so pressed in her heart for a long time, this pimple would not be eliminated. Instead, it would take root and sprout until it grew sharp branches, which would make her tired both physically and mentally. Yin North City heart is also the same flowers in full bloom. Love to the depths. The hands of uncontrollable want to raise their hands to embrace the flowers into the bosom. Mo Shanghua is still a little uncomfortable, subconsciously back 2 steps to avoid his contact. Yin North City, sword, eyebrow, tiny ring. Again is unclear so. Again is embarrassed of hope to her. Mo Shanghua was not comfortable with Yin Beicheng's eyes. He habitually turned his head to avoid his eyes and said, "The emperors must have something to do with Yin Moli. He ordered you to be the deputy commander to mobilize Yuzhou's troops. What did he want to do?" Yin Beicheng glanced at the bottom of his eyes with a smile, but when he saw that Mo Shanghua was so serious, he corrected his face and analyzed it carefully. Yuzhou scattered 30,000 soldiers, guarding the border of the moon and the country. Yangguan 10,000 and Huijun 5,000 behind Yangguan. These 2 places are very important and far apart. The remaining 15,000 are scattered in Yuzhou, and there are more than 10 counties and states. It's only 15,000. He will have 8,000 elite troops tomorrow. He can only transfer them recently. In this way, Yuzhou City and its surrounding areas will be empty, but the border will not be affected. As he spoke, the color of thinking in his eyes became more and more intense. Big brother died early. Now he is the eldest son, a few years older than me, but he has not been granted the title of king. If he can successfully pacify the rebellion in Anzhou. After Yin Beiqing's advice, the disordered thoughts of Huanao in the street, like a tangled thread, suddenly straightened out and successfully pierced on their respective needles. The previous defeat should be intentional, just to show the ferocity of the mob. In this way, he cannot win the respect of the prince after the defeat. As for robbing your mining weapons, I'm afraid it's also to prepare for everything after going to the fiefdom. It's more obvious that he doesn't want to be a favored prince in Beijing. Yin Moli is introverted and steady on the surface, but he has such great ambition inside. Yinbei City, good-looking phoenix eyes, such as suddenly falling ice in general, the temperature suddenly decreased, then he must really have such strength. Since ancient times, there's always been no real flesh and blood in the struggle for the throne. Since Yin Moli dares to fight for it, he must be ready to defeat the enemy. Mo Shanghua originally thought that Yin Beiqing's ambition should not be hidden at this time, but she never thought that now facing a person who had such a big threat to him, there was only endless cold in his eyes, and no sign of half ambition could be found. Yin Beiqing wants the throne. She can see it. However, it is impossible for a normal person to hide himself at such a time. How could he lose half of his ambition? Mo Shanghua suddenly felt strange, but seeing him look like this, he still held back his curiosity and didn't ask. He said, "He has thrown an olive branch to me 3 times and 4 times, and I have falsely promised. I think this will be his most unsuccessful move." The 4 eyes are opposite, and both of them are inside. At the moment, the color of the ink is deeper. It is clear that they have not said much, but they have already been tacit. Although Yin Beiqing has a reputation for waste firewood, Mo Zhang's ability to handle affairs is excellent. In less than a day, he has transferred out 8,000 elite troops, and the transfer is extremely reasonable, which does not make the troops everywhere uncoordinated. What's more, he was different from other villains. After he planned to mobilize the troops that day, he immediately came to Yin Beiqing to ask for instructions. If someone else, he would have asked for instructions from the so-called commander-in-chief. Yinbei City knew this person's carefulness, but it didn't matter. But the flower on the street couldn't help looking up. When he casually saw Mo Zhang's plan for dispatching troops, Yin Beiqing waved his hand directly. "I think it's very good. You can ask Brother Huang again." In this way, is not Yuzhou all exposed to others? Mo Jiang knew about Yinbei City straw bag, but he never thought it was such a straw bag. He couldn't help saying, "Lord, this is not right. This matter has exposed the distribution of Yuzhou's troops and horses. This, Brother Huang, is not an outsider. Besides, he is the commander-in-chief. He will depend on Brother Huang in the future." Mo Jiang, a word is not finished. Mo Shanghua directly interrupted his words, a pair of random Langdang appearance. In this way, it is obvious to attach everything to Yin Moli. Can be such an important thing on the side of the flowers, but also did not see the slightest intention to stop. Ma Jiang, helpless, had to bow his head. Yes, the end will obey. Wait a minute. Mo Shanghua, who had been silent all the time, suddenly raised her eyes and said, 8,000 elite soldiers have been transferred, which is not a small number. Please ask General Mo to go on and strengthen the patrol in order to prevent the invasion of the mob during this period. After a pause, she turned her eyes and looked at the boys around Yinbei City. Zhao of each city also ordered them to go down and let them strengthen the patrol and martial law of each city and county to ensure the peace in the city. Mo Jiang and Xiao Si did not answer immediately. They turned their eyes to Yin Beiqing. The words of the princess are equivalent to the words of the king. Yin Beiqing did not care about the general, particularly casual mouth. Language is difficult to cover the doting. Yes. After the boy answered, he went down in a hurry. Mo Jiang saw Mo Shanghua for the first time. Seeing her so clever again, he couldn't help looking at her more. His eyes were a bit thoughtful. Then he said, "Yes," and went on. The next morning, the flowers on the street were ready to go. Yin Beicheng and Yin Moli were already ready. They took a small group of people to the meeting place outside the city. As for Mo Jiang, after looking for Yin Moli yesterday, he mobilized troops all night and waited outside the city. After the meeting, they went on to make peace with the 5,000 soldiers in Yin Moli's mouth. In this way, more than 10,000 troops went to Anzhou. The distance between Anzhou and Yuzhou was not far. After 2 days of marching, the soldiers and horses arrived 30 miles near Anzhou and camped here. At that time, the night was deep. However, Yin Moli pulled Yin Beicheng away and discussed with him and many generals about the time of tomorrow's expedition. And Mo Shanghua was not good at participating in it, so he sent Qin Lin out to inquire about the current situation of the rioters. After Qin Lin came back, the whole person seemed to be bad. His face was very dignified. He stuttered and said, "The king, the princess, the slave inquired, and now the situation seems very bad." Mo Shanghua eyebrow tipped tiny pick, set straight body how. Qin Lin wiped the sweat on his forehead, and his face was not very good. According to the news from the spies in the camp, there were only a few hundred people in Anzhou. Later, under their agitation, they gathered more than 4,000 people from nearby. Later, they heard that the imperial court sent people to suppress them. Unexpectedly, they directly captured the people and filled their army. Now there are more than 7,000 people scattered. More than 7,000 people. There are so many the thin eyebrows of the flowers on the street suddenly tightened tightly into a ball with a dignified complexion. When she first came to the world, she read a lot of historical books. According to the records in the books, since the founding of the People's Republic of China, the largest scale of people's riot was only more than 2,000 people, and it was caused by the remaining evils of the previous dynasty. Wujuan is just a small county. The disaster of food shortage is not so serious. It is far from the national drought decades ago. In those years, there are not so many mobs. Compared with this disaster, it is strange that such a large-scale rebellion was triggered by such a small disaster. But, for a moment, she couldn't say what was wrong. Thinking about this, the flower on the street frowned more tightly, and there was a strong doubt in her eyes. Is there any other useful news? Qin Lin shook his head and looked ashamed. I'm stupid. At present, I can only inquire about these news. Well, I see. You go out. Now, however, I just arrived near Anzhou, and it's not Qin Lin's fault that I can't find out. Therefore, Mo Shanghua didn't investigate. I'm in a hurry. After 2 days, you must be tired. Go to have a rest first. Yes. Qin Lin nodded and was about to go down, but the flower suddenly remembered something. He called him back again with strict eyes. By the way, this place is not like the mansion. If it's not for orders, you must not walk at will. If there is no special situation, you should always follow me in the daytime. Qin Lin even touched the back of his head and said with a smile, I know that the princess cares about me. I'm sure I will listen to you. You can rest assured. As soon as he resumed speaking, he said that he was always so stumbling, but his simple and honest face was as comfortable as ever. That's good. Mo Shanghua nodded her chin. Then she turned and sat down. Seeing this, Qin Lin retreated quietly at the right time. The army is no better than the palace, which can provide a courtyard for Mo Shanghua and Yan Beicheng. Now the conditions in the army are limited, so they can only live in the same military tent. Now she knows too little about Anzhou, so it's impossible for her to sleep like this and just wait for Yan Beicheng to come back. When Yan Beicheng came back, it was already dark, and Mo Shanghua was holding a book and reading it in front of the candlestick. He didn't come back until he came near. He looked up at him and said, You're back. Under the dim yellow and gentle light of the main lamp, the white cheeks of the flowers on the street are covered with a soft light, and the always cold cheeks add a sense of tenderness. The chill at the bottom of Yanbei City's eyes suddenly dissipated and turned into a pool of warm water, but in the mouth, It was the waste firewood in front of people. I don't want to either. His whole person directly collapsed on the side of the flower on the street, a tired state. After listening to so long, one did not understand this king's, but is almost moldy, really tired. It's no better here than in the palace. Although there are so many ears and eyes, if you want to say something secret, you can still create such an opportunity. There are so many yin moly people in today's military camp. Naturally, you have to be careful everywhere and never forget to be on guard. Mo Shanghua naturally knew this. Her eyes like a fan moved gently, and she said thoughtfully, I think, Wang, you must be hungry for his dinner today. It's clear that the king has not used up yet, so he was called away by the second brother. Mention this matter. Yin Beiqing immediately full of the color of resentment. Lord, calm down. Mo Shanghua closed the book and put it aside. She took the thick porcelain teapot and poured a glass of water to Yin Beiqing. Yin Beiqing took the drink and touched his stomach. He could not help but wail and got up again from the mat as soon as the words fell. Two soldiers outside the door came in and bowed their hands and clasped their fists. See you, Wang Yi. Yin Beiqing waved his hand casually and said, I haven't had much dinner. Please pass it on quickly and prepare some more for me. The two soldiers looked at each other for a while, and then one of them, looking rather embarrassed, said, Lord, now the kitchen is resting. If you cook now, I'm afraid there's so much nonsense. Yin Beiqing's white and clean cheek suddenly turned black, and his face showed displeasure. It's a great thing that I'm hungry. Don't you take me seriously and want to starve me to death? The inn will not dare. The inn will go now. The soldier immediately lowered his head, did not dare to say more, and went down bitterly. When they got out of the army tent, the man who had just talked with Yin Beiqing was gloomy and couldn't help spat on the ground. It's just a piece of waste wood. He yelled at us like this. Brother, don't you think he's a clear practitioner? Keep it down. The soldier next to him gave him a hand and said, Who doesn't know that this is a dandy's boy who doesn't know anything? He has a strong ability to act recklessly. If His Royal Highness is not here, it's all right. Now His Royal Highness is still here. Let's have a little trouble and serve him well. We can't hate him one or two at that time. The soldier sighed, his face full of grievances. He just put in a good fetus, and first endure him for a few days. As they said this, their pace gradually faded away. I don't know that both of them are practicing martial arts and internal power. Even if they are so far apart, their conversation is still in their ears. Mo Shanghua glanced at Yin Beiqing, frowning and frowning. You are so, although you have taken them away, your reputation is getting worse and worse. I have a reputation for being a waste firewood outside. It's no harm to be a little bit black. Yin Beiqing couldn't see the color of care. He was still sitting like he had just done. He turned his eyes and looked at the flowers on the street. You should know the situation of the mob now. I've asked Qin Lin to inquire about it. In my opinion, although there are a lot of rioters now, if we really look at it, it can't match our current number. After all, they are rioters. There must be some gap between them and the soldiers who have been training in the barracks all the year round. This battle should not be difficult. Yin Beiqing shook his head, and his eyes were full of secluded color. If it's so easy to win, then Yin Moly's defeat first. Doesn't it seem that he is too stupid? Mo Shanghua instantly understood his meaning. Eyebrows can't help gently stir up a few minutes. You mean he will be in this line of obstruction? Yanbei City didn't open his mouth, and the whole person restored the old appearance of the cloaked man and took out a secret letter from his sleeve. Mo Shanghua took the secret letter, unfolded to look down, raised eyebrows, suddenly a convergence, turned to light, frown up. All the information in this secret letter is important information, but it's much more than what Qin Lin inquired about. According to the letter, these rioters got the news a day ago, and then they called back the scattered people who went out to burn, kill, and plunder, and made full deployment. The battle was quite big. Yin Moly, who was stationed near here, was said to have suffered a heavy loss of 7,000 elite soldiers. As a compromise to the capital, he lost 2,000 people. In fact, he only lost 700. As for the rest, some of them appeared in the former Jiangjun County, while the remaining 1,000 people were missing. Mo Shanghua looked at the 3 words of 1,000 people on the secret letter, and her face was a little dignified. 1,000 people are missing. How can it be? Where did Yin Moli put these 1,000 people? What does he want to do? Yin North City is also complexion quite dignified, shook his head. My person temporarily didn't find out. Flower Thousand Willow, they're also sent spies to see again now. However, no matter where these 1,000 people go, it's not good for you and me. The flower in the street gazed and thought for a moment, then said, "There is one thing I forgot to tell you." "What's the matter?" Her thin lips slightly pursed, delicate cheek calm as water. "I have accepted Yin Moli's invitation. Since he has so many abnormalities, then I think he certainly has some big action, and these days will need to use my place, then about can know what he wants to do." After a pause, she looked at Yin Beicheng, whose face was also calm and unchanging. Then she suddenly remembered something. "I forgot that the whole palace was under your secret control. You should have known it already." Yin Beicheng silently forgot Mo Shanghua for a long time. When Mo Shanghua thought that she had said something wrong and made him unhappy, he saw his beautiful lips gently picked with a smile, and his eyebrows and eyes softened. "I knew that for a long time. It was always different from you. If you were joking, Mo Shanghua has seen Yin Beicheng smile for many times, but most of the smile is not from the heart. As today's sincere and soft smile, she is really the first time to see it, and the lip petal also involuntarily affects a few points." Yin Beicheng liked the way Mo Shanghua laughed. His lips were slightly hooked, and his eyebrows and eyes were slightly bent. In his eyes, she was 10 times more beautiful than her usual cold appearance. He couldn't help raising his hand and touching the corner of her lips. "The situation is not clear now. Let's have a rest first and talk about tomorrow's affairs tomorrow." Without any response from Mo Shanghua, Yin Beicheng regained his formal appearance and regained his status as the useless firewood king Yu, and his whole body was suddenly filled with dandy spirit. Mo Shanghua nodded and was about to speak when he heard the voice of 2 soldiers outside ring. "Lord, the food is ready. Do you want to bring it in now?" Mo Shanghua glanced at him, got up, and walked to the bed in the tent of the army. "You'd better have a good meal. I'll have a rest first." Between the words, "with a bit if there is no smile." Yin Beicheng's eyebrows and eyes were suddenly dyed with a smile, but when he turned to the soldiers outside the door, he became very impatient again. "I'll reward you. It's late at night. You all go away. Don't disturb the rest of the king and the princess." The 2 people outside the door looked at each other and saw the ambiguous color in each other's eyes. They said, "Yes," busily, and went far away with a meal just prepared by the kitchen. Just entered the account in the Mo Shanghua, a pretty face suddenly black as the bottom of the pot. Yin Beicheng got up and came in with an excellent face. He walked around the flower, standing beside the bed. He took off his shoes and socks and lay down on the bed. He said with a smile, "There is only one bed in the army. I think the princess should not give up to see that the king has nowhere to sleep, so I can only grievance you and me to sleep together." Looking at Yin Beicheng with ruffian smile on the bed, I felt a bit gnash in my teeth in my heart. But on second thought, they did not sleep without the same bed, so they took off their shoes and lay down in the bed with their clothes. Their bodies were very close to the edge of the bed, and almost half of them were exposed outside the quilt. Seemingly open-minded, in fact, it is not a little daughter's home mind. Yin Beicheng's smile deepened, and he pulled his quilt towards the flower on the street, but he didn't move towards her. He ignored his naked body, and then closed his eyes and had a rest. Mo Shanghua quietly turned back to see Yin Beicheng's present appearance. Her heart softened, and she moved towards him, covering Yin Beicheng's quilt tightly. Then she closed her eyes. At that time, Yin Beicheng, who had closed his eyes for a long time, could not help but pick up the corners of his lips with a real smile. As the night deepened, most of the soldiers in the huge military tent fell asleep except the soldiers on guard. However, the original sleep of the same secure Mo Shanghua closed eyes but shoe opened, has always been quiet eyes surging up a bit of killing. She almost instantly lifted the quilt and sat up from the bed. At the same time, she quickly drew a dagger from the pillow with her right hand. The whole person entered a highly alert state of preparation. However, the masked man in black, who was only 1 meter away from the bed, flashed a bit of surprise in his eyes. He soon lowered his head and said, "Your Highness, please." This voice, Imo Shanghua remembers, seems to be the bodyguard beside Yin Moli. Seeing that this person's whole body is really not half angry, her killing intention in her eyes gradually slowed down, and her delicate jaw gently nodded. The man in black, the bodyguard of Yin Moli, nodded slightly and walked out. Imo Shanghua turns his head and looks at Yin Beicheng, who is still on the bed. His breath is long. He is about to turn around to keep up with the bodyguard, but he suddenly opens his eyes, blinks at her, and then closes it again, as if he never wakes up. It turns out that he woke up a long time ago. Imo Shanghua couldn't help laughing, but thinking of the bodyguard waiting outside, she found her shoes and went out with her. The bodyguard was very clear about the distribution of the night patrol soldiers in the barracks, so he left the barracks with Imo Shanghua to avoid the night patrol soldiers, and finally stopped in a very lush dark forest. At this moment, Yin Beicheng, who had been pretending to be sleeping, sat up and covered a deep color with a pair of Dandy's clear eyes. "Lord, the princess has been taken to the dense forest for half a kilometer. Do you want someone to keep an eye on her?" Mo Ling didn't know when he appeared in front of the bed and bowed his head and eyes. The dark color of Yin Beicheng's deep eyes surged slightly, and there was no expression on his face, which meant that he was not angry. The natural cold air of his whole body also made people feel a little afraid. After a long time, I saw that his water chestnut jaw shook slightly, and his voice was low. "Yin Moli is too sharp. It's easy to find that you only sent people to stare out of the dense forest. That is, if the princess didn't come back before dawn, he would come back quickly to report." "Yes." Mo Ling simply should voice no half of the state of accident. At this juncture, Yin Beicheng risked being watched by Yin Moli when he found out his forces. Mo Ling was not surprised for a long time. After all, the whole Dark Guard camp knew how much their master cared about Imo Shanghua, so he was not surprised. The whereabouts of more than 1,000 people should be explored as soon as possible. Yin North City Light, while A ordered A, then lay back. "Nothing can appear at will go." Mo Ling gave a salute, then bent down and sat down. There was no light in the deep forest, and Yin Moli didn't even have a lantern. Only the moonlight reflected his figure. "Here you are, your highness." Yin Moli turned his back to the bodyguard, who came behind him and drooped his head. Yin Moli didn't open his mouth. He just turned around and glanced at the guard. The guard suddenly understood and quickly left. In the big forest, there were only 2 people, Imo Shanghua and Yin Moli. Waiting for the bodyguard to go away, Yin Moli turned his body completely and put his hands behind him. The note sent by the princess that day is really true. Imo Shanghua's always cold cheek was covered with a smile, but it didn't reach the bottom of his eyes. "Your Highness is joking. Although I'm a woman, I'm also the truth of a gentleman's words. It's impossible to deceive your Highness. The palace is really right. The spirit of the princess is really different from that of the past." Yin Imoli looks up and down at Imo Shanghua and slowly opens his mouth. Referring to the past, his smile remained unchanged, saying, "Your Highness called me here late at night to talk about the past? Or do you just want to find a way to relieve the boredom in the long night?" Yin Imoli lips cape this just raised a few minutes. Shape if peach blossom eyes slightly pick up. Voice is particularly magnetic pleasant to hear. Since the princess doesn't want to chat this temple, then you say some other. This pair of good skin appearance, plus this seemingly excellent temperament. If you change to be an ordinary woman, you must have lost your heart. But in Imo Shanghua's eyes, what's tender and affectionate in his good-looking eyes? There are just countless calculations and invisible swords and halberds, dangerous and tight. Her lips smile a little. Tone also returned to the usual indifference and estrangement of the state. "I probably also know what your Highness wants to say. In doubt what? I can tell you now. I married Yin Beicheng as forced, I have no emotion for him. Don't you think that if he is good to me, I will be soft-hearted? I know best in my heart that although he is good to me, he may not be bad to other women." As she spoke, the temperature between her eyebrows and eyes dropped a little. "The most unbelievable thing in the world is a man. I'm afraid of Lu Xiang and him." Yin Moli quietly looked at the look of the flowers in the street. Seeing that her eyes were absolutely cold, he knew that what he said was true. He believed it 7 or 8 points and said, "Not only men, but all things in the world are untrustworthy. Only interests are the most trustworthy." With that, I took a meaningful look at the flowers on the street. I saw that there was no color of opposition on her face. Instead, she seemed to agree with her and kept silent. Then I continued, "I don't need to say much nonsense. Now I want to tell you that you just need to recruit. Tomorrow I will take people to attack Anzhou City. If you are defeated, you just need to give more guidance and let Yanbei City escape in the direction of Yuzhou East." The slender willow eyebrows on the street were slightly picked up, and the corners of the lips were slightly mocked. "Your Highness, don't you forget that I was brought along by the king this time? I'm afraid I'm following tomorrow's march, and the soldiers will be dissatisfied." What she said is also true. It's true in the barracks since ancient times. Before leaving, when she appeared beside Yin Beicheng, many soldiers were dissatisfied with her. If Yin Beicheng didn't show his usual indulgence, he would be forced to come. It's not that she doesn't want to dress up as a man, but if that happens, if Yin Beicheng is plotted, she won't show up. Yin Mo-Li lips cape lightly evokes. The Mao color is more and more meaningful. If you don't have this ability, you don't dare to follow. Mo, Shanhua, a non-committal, eyes slightly lift so my benefits. It still depends on your choice. Under the advantage of height, Yin Mo stood in front of Mo Shanghua. Half of his cheek was in the dark, and the other cheek was blurred. But his eyes were very deep, like 2 deep whirlpools in the dark, which could not be seen or touched. If there is a hook on his lips, he vowed, to live alone in Yuzhou. It's your choice whether you are not oppressed by others or whether you want to marry someone else. Mentioning this, he suddenly moves in the heart. The Mao color is deep several su. Today's Mo Shanghua is not what it used to be. If she was accepted as a concubine and tied their honor and disgrace together, she would have to work for herself wholeheartedly, which should be good. Mo Shanghua unnaturally didn't know what he thought in his heart. After listening to him, he nodded his chin and looked satisfied. "Well, that's it. After it's done, I'll entrust my highness to take care of it." High fives. Yin Moli stretched out a hand and spoke sternly. Mo Shanghua hates to touch him from the bottom of her heart, but the current situation really can't allow her to fool around. Pressure to the color of disgust in the eyes, she raised her hand expressionless, and Yin Mo-Li's hand gently hit, and then recovered his hand unharmed, then said, "The night is deep. I can't stay too long, leave." Finished saying, "Don't wait for Yin Mo-Li to open a mouth." She then turns round to leave directly. Until Yin Mo-Li's figure disappeared behind her, she couldn't hide her disgust. She took out her handkerchief and wiped her hands carefully until every finger was not let go. As for the handkerchief, she didn't even keep it. She just threw it away. At that time, far away in the imperial city, the emperor sat on the seat of the red gold dragon. He looked at the memorial in his hand quietly. It was like this. He was born with the spirit of the king. He didn't dare to look up. Lu Xiang, dressed in a formal official uniform, is clearly the prime minister. 1 person below, 10,000 people above. But now in front of the emperor, he also takes away his usual arrogance, slightly conceals his eyes, looks solemn and humble, and stands at the next head, waiting for the emperor to finish reading the memorial. After a while, the emperor raised his head and put the memorial aside. Because of the rebellion in Anzhou, it seems that some evils of the former dynasty began to be active among the people again. Before the rebellion in Anzhou is settled, there will be other troubles. I really have a headache. When Lu Xiang heard the speech, he suddenly understood it in his heart and said, "The remaining evils of the former dynasty are not to be let go." In my opinion, We must send someone to go as soon as possible to wipe out the remaining evils of the former dynasty. What the Prime Minister said is true. The Emperor nodded thoughtfully and said, "According to the Prime Minister, who should be sent?" Lu Xiang dropped his eyes and thought about it seriously. After a while, he said again, "This year's imperial examination has just ended. There are many new talents among I Chen. I Chen thinks that it's better to take this opportunity to choose some good talents to work for our court in the future." The Emperor nodded. His face was gentle, and he looked like a good speaker. Since the Prime Minister has a heavy opinion on this matter, it's better to recommend a few people so that I can refer to them. Then, without waiting for Lu Xiang to speak, he turned his eyes to his personal eunuch Lu Wang. Lu Wang had been with the Emperor for many years. He knew what the Emperor meant. He nodded his head slightly to answer the orders and turned to the little eunuch. After a while, the little eunuch moved the table and chairs. The table was full of ink, paper, and inkstones. When Lu Xiang saw this, he couldn't say anything. He had to sit down at the table and think about it for a moment before he began to write. "Your Majesty." Lu Xiangli straightened his sleeves and presented the letter to the Emperor. The Emperor took it, but did not open it immediately. Instead, he put it aside. Instead, he picked up a red ink brush and read on the memorial he had just read. Without raising his head, he said, "Prime Minister, go back first. I'll see it later and make a decision." "Yes, I will leave." Lu Xiang bowed his head and bowed his eyes for a salute. Then he retreated. From the beginning to the end, he strictly observed the etiquette and was prudent. When Lu Xiang withdrew from the imperial study, the Emperor, who had just returned to be gentle, turned to be sharp, as if he had changed a person. Lu Wang had been with the Emperor for many years. Seeing this, he quickly stepped forward and dismissed all the maids and eunuchs in the outer room. Then he brought a cup of tea that the Emperor drank every day and gently placed it on the table. The Emperor put down his writing brush and opened Lu Xiang's book. After a while, he whispered Lu Feng, Chun Xin. After pondering for a long time, he raised his head and looked at Lu Wang. "Do you remember these two people?" Lu Wang frowned and thought for a long time before he said, "If you go back to the Emperor, I really don't remember. Every year, those who are elected in the imperial examination will have more or less contact with officials and princes. Naturally, the Emperor should pay attention every year. What Lu Wang means is that they are clean." The Emperor nodded slightly, and there was no joy or anger in his eagle eyes. "These two people have nothing to do with the Prime Minister and Mo Li." Now it seems that the Prime Minister is really devoted to the country and loyal. Although the words say so, can Mao inside, but clear of the limit a few from light to mock of color. In terms of tact, who in the court doesn't know that the Prime Minister is the first? No matter when he is a loyal person who only knows how to serve the country wholeheartedly. He never asks the court to fight with him. Therefore, the official voice is excellent both in officialdom and among the people. But in the eyes of the Emperor, the more so, the more he could not rest assured. However, the Prime Minister is really doing a good job now. Just a few days ago, because of Yin Moli's affair, his doubts about them have disappeared. "I think these two people are good, so I tunnel the Prime Minister. This is the intention. They will be appointed to Zhuo Qianhu and Yuqianhu. In a few days, they will lead their troops to wipe out the remaining evils of the previous dynasty." By this time, the sharp color on the Emperor's face had been completely removed, and he had regained his warm and talkative manner. The Prime Minister has always been brilliant. It must be right to recommend them. Lu Wang took the bright yellow brocade silk cloth used in the imperial edict and put it in front of the Emperor's table. He opened his mouth with a smile. The Emperor did not answer, but he lowered his eyes to write. After a while, he finished the writing. After giving the imperial edict to Lu Wang, he quickly got up and walked around the desk to the half-open window. These days, the weather is always particularly gloomy. It's clear that it's day, but it's as dark as evening. It's really annoying. The Emperor looked at the sky outside, his thick eyebrows locked tightly, and his eyes crossed a deep dark color. "Lu Wang, have you heard from the National Master in the Moon Kingdom? I always feel that there is something abnormal in the sky. If the national teacher is here, we can observe it." Except for the news that the national master was staying at the royal family of Uegwa more than 10 days ago, no news has been heard recently. Lu Wing shook his head with a worried look on his face and said with relief, "Your Majesty, please take it easy. The state of the moon is thousands of miles away from Yao and Yao. It's a long way to go. There's also news that is not in time. In other words, you should take good care of the dragon's body when the National Master's tour was not like this." "How can I not worry?" The emperor frowned half a minute and said, "Send another letter. In addition, the news from Anzhou can't be relaxed day by day. It can be sent back at any time." "Yes, I do." Yesterday, Yanbei City was pulled to follow the long-time deployment. Early this morning, Yin Moli directly ordered to go down and kill Anzhou City. When Imo Shanghua wanted to go with Yin Beicheng, she was naturally opposed by countless voices. Naturally, Yin Moli didn't mean to help, but her eyes showed a sense of watching a good play. In the face of such a situation, Imo Shanghua took a dagger and threw it on a pillar beside the speaker. The blade fell into the wood and immediately shocked a group of people. Naturally, no one dared to say more. In this way, Imo Shanghua also reluctantly went out with Imo Shanghua in the name of extraordinary martial arts. If you want to reach Anzhou, you have to go through the main entrance outside of Anzhou. Yin Imo Li Ben sent forward to explore the way, and the rest of the army was waiting 5 miles away. I thought I would have to wait for 3 hours anyway. I never thought that in less than 2 hours, the forward would come back with his men, and the soldiers would not be damaged. Imo Shanghua and others all have doubts in their eyes. When the forward sees this, he has no time to wipe the sweat on his forehead. He kneels down directly on one knee and says, "I'll tell you, Your Highness. The last general has explored carefully. There is no one at all the gates in front of him." "What? How is that possible?" "Yes, they should have known for a long time that the army was coming down. How could it be empty?" "Well, in my opinion, they know they are invincible, and they have been defeated." When the generals heard this speech, they suddenly looked different and began to discuss it one after another. Only a few people did not speak, including Mo Jiang. Yin North City slants ahead to look at Mo Shang Flower, the Mao inside, but have no half scent because of this matter should rise of emotion. Obviously walked God. Since he came with the army, his mind has fallen here. People are used to the appearance of Yanbei City. After a glance, they turn their eyes and look at Yin Moli unhappily. "Your Highness, what do you think?" The flowers in the street smell the words, and the light of the eyes also falls on Yin Moli, but the eyes are not as surprised or conceited as others, only pure and bright. Her idea is very simple. Now is not the time for her to speak. She will not be unhappy. At that time, Yin Moli's eyes were also clear and quiet. When he heard people asking him, he just said, "They should not be so timid. According to our temple, they should know that they are invincible." They simply gathered up their forces and deployed their defense in Anzhou. Mo Jiang nodded after hearing the speech and said, "The Yin general also thinks that at this time, Anzhou should be like an iron bucket, and it's hard to break in, Your Highness. If not, let's have a rest here and go to the spy to find out the current situation of Anzhou." Another general, however, shook his head and retorted in a strong voice, "It's just a woman's opinion. You know, if the people in Anzhou are not eliminated every day, the people around them will suffer one more day. Your Highness, according to the opinion of the last general, we must not give them a chance to breathe at this juncture. If we have such soldiers, we can encircle Anzhou and even trap them to death. General Wang is really brave, but if you do as you say, have you ever thought about how much money you need to spend on food, grass, and military, which will lead to the emptiness of the national treasury at that time? If taxes are increased, it is not the common people who suffer." In the face of General Wang's words, Mo Jiang did not give in for half a minute and argued, "It's better to take a rest for a night and attack at one stroke when the situation is clear." General Wang was flattered. Naturally, he was not happy. As soon as he saw that the two sides were going to fight, Yin Moli, who had been listening for a long time, said, "What the two generals said is reasonable." On his handsome face, he was still at ease, and his words were all round. Since both of them are reasonable, it's better to agree with the opinions of the two generals. In this way, the strategy discussed yesterday should be adjusted to recall all the soldiers who had been sent to attack Zhengzhuangwen and integrate them together. Then, according to yesterday's opinion, the soldiers should be divided into 4 routes to attack the 4 gates of Anzhou, east, west, north, and south, and strive to wipe out the disaster of Anzhou at one stroke. Say, Yin Amoli turns Mao to see to one side, is Yin North City. Emperor younger brother feels how. However, Yin Beicheng had no reaction, and obviously he had not recovered. After all, he was the general of Yuzhou. Mo Jiang immediately covered his lips and coughed heavily. They were not far apart, and they were so loud that Yin Beicheng's mind came back together and looked at Yin Amoli blankly. What's the matter? When the generals heard the words, they all looked angry and speechless. It can be seen that they have been dissatisfied with Yanbei City for a long time. But Mo Jiang, with no anger on his face, said, "My lord, your highness, please ask me how to march." Without waiting for Ma Jiang to explain, Yan Beicheng suddenly nodded and said, "All according to the emperor brother, I have no opinion." The rest of the generals were flushed with anger and looked at Yin Moli one after another. However, he saw that the upper half of Yin Mo's face was not angry, and his face was calm and gentle. In that case, all the officers and men listened to the order. "The inn will be here." As soon as the words came out, the generals, who were still angry and did not dare to speak, quickly dismounted one after another, kneeling on one knee, drooping their heads and eyes, waiting for orders. Speaking of important things, Yin Mo's gentle face suddenly converged, and his eyes were solemn. Everyone can start to march into Anzhou and stop 8 miles outside the city. According to yesterday's discussion, the directions are in the east, west, north, and south directions of Anzhou City. Remember, no one is allowed to attack without the command of the temple. Those who violate the order will be dealt with by military law. After a pause, he frowned and looked at Yan Beicheng. There was a sense of helplessness in his words. Brother Huang is not good at marching. I think General Mo is loyal, resourceful, and brave. He's also your old part. I'd better follow you, lest you're not used to other people. At the end of the day, I will always protect the safety of the Lord. Your Highness can rest assured. Without waiting for Yin Beicheng to speak, Mo Jiang simply responded with a strong voice. Yin Beicheng looked at Mo Jiang with great satisfaction and said, "Brother Huang is always thinking about our king. With Brother Huang's protection and General Mo, our king is at ease." Yin Mo Li just a faint smile, not too much emotion. One side of the Mo Jiang is also the same unswerving smile. "Let's go." In Yin Mo Li's light tone, the army of more than 10,000 people formally marched out to the outside of Anzhou. It's summer, just after noon, and the weather is still as hot and dry as noon. Yin Beicheng was waiting in the direction of the north gate of Anzhou City with 4,000 soldiers. At this time, his face was covered with sweat. "We've been waiting for half an hour. The heat is going to die. Why can't the emperor give orders? Can't we wait like this all the time?" Yin Beicheng raised his hand discontentedly and wiped the sweat on his face. But deep in his eyes, which seemed discontented and resentful, it was a quiet color with no emotion. It was very different from the expression on his face and what he said, as if there was another person living inside. The soldiers on one side are also sweating profusely. After listening to his words, they not only scold Yin Beicheng for being a dandy, but also feel dissatisfied with Yin Mo. At present, only Mo Jiang and a speechless forward are the generals following Yin Beicheng. There are no more people who denounce Mo Shanghua seriously. Therefore, Mo Shanghua just said, "Lord, it's already past noon now. It will be much cooler soon. Don't be so upset." Then he handed his handkerchief to Yin Beicheng to wipe his sweat. Then he turned his head and looked at Mo Jiang. "Please bear with me." Mo Jiang's jaw was slightly lower, and his face was not half full of contempt and dissatisfaction with the woman. The princess is serious, and the general and all the officers and men understand and have no complaints. Yin Beicheng wiped the sweat on his cheek with the handkerchief of flowers on the street. His resentment was a little less. He was about to tell the soldiers to sit down and have a good rest. Then he saw two men coming from the west, one after the other, to see the armor on his body. They were in the same army. Mo Jiang narrowed his eyes and looked at it carefully. He said, "Wang Yi, it seems that His Highness sent those two strikers to inquire about the news." Yin Beicheng nodded impatiently and said to the general behind, "Let them come here." "Yes." As soon as they got near, they knelt down in front of Yin Beicheng, and the first man said, "See Deputy Commander. Tell the commander to ask Mo Jiang to come to deliver a message. The other three gates are already under attack, and most of the troops are at the south gate where the commander goes. Now the defense of the other three gates is lax. Please give the deputy commander an order immediately and attack the north gate with all his strength. It must be a quick decision." "I know. Go back and tell my brother that I will try my best to live up to what he asked." Yin Beicheng didn't feel excited at all. He just responded listlessly. Obviously, he had no confidence in the war. Yin Beicheng had already said so, but the two did not move. He said frankly, "Deputy Commander Hui, the commander has ordered that the general should help His Highness here. There's no need to go back and report to him." Yin Beicheng's eyes were slightly dark, and he was about to put on an impatient gesture to drive people away. So he said, "Lord, your Highness must also be for your safety." So he specially asked the two strikers to help. So don't refuse. Let them follow. Many officers and soldiers pay attention to every move here. They don't think that Yin Beicheng will listen to her words when they listen to Mo Shanghua's words. After all, he just said to let them go back to report back. But these two people are so shameful. If they're changed, they will be unhappy, not to mention Yin Beicheng, who is willful and willful. But I never thought that although Yin Beicheng was still frowning and dissatisfied, he finally nodded, "Just follow me. Remember, I'll listen to you later. I will obey you." Two people should be the same, and then consciously remounted, driving the horse to stand around a few generals. However, the eyes are from time to sweep the flowers on the street. Some of the generals who didn't think so could not help looking at Mo Shang for a few more times. For 2 times in a row, Yin Beicheng listened to Mo Shang's words. It seems that the old rumor that the king was afraid of his inner world is true. Mo Shanghua was even more unexpected. In the future, everyone in the city knew that Yin Beicheng was extremely afraid. The princess said that Yin Beicheng, who was the king, did not dare to have a retort. Attack the city. Yin Beicheng didn't pay more attention to others. He just waited for the two men to take the seat and gave the order. As soon as his voice fell, he saw Mo Jiang's face turn. His face was covered with a layer of killing color, and his eyes were full of calm and resolute. Then he heard Missouri Jiang drive his horse forward and face all the soldiers in a loud and solemn voice. "Deputy General Wang ordered you to lead 1,000 people to attack from the right wing with the ladder. You must be careful of the enemy's ambush." Yes, the occasional comments in the army were completely eliminated, and more than 1,000 people immediately responded to them, which was quite impressive. These people are all soldiers brought out by Mo Jiang. Yinbei City usually doesn't ask questions, so it's not too weak. Han Xinxiu, you're going to attack the city gate with 800 generals, siege vehicles, and stones. Remember to be careful not to hurt the people over there. Mo Jiang continued to command calmly. The rest of the people follow the Deputy General Zhao, followed closely. "I will obey you. I will obey you." Yes, as soon as Ma Jiang's voice fell, the voice of the generals echoed one after another. Then, after nodding in Yinbei City, the generals poured out like a tide. It was really spectacular. As for the two men who came to deliver the letter first, they were added temporarily. Mo Jiang would not change his marching plan because of them. He just said, "The two vanguards will follow our general and protect the prince and princess here." The two men were not very dissatisfied, and they were very happy to answer. With the advance of the army, the sound of war drums is also rhythmic and slowly sounded. The drums are dull and resounding, such as thunder bursts, and the heavy rain comes. The sound seems to beat on people's heartstrings, which makes people's hearts particularly excited. Yin Beicheng, who had been distracted frequently, was also shocked by the sound of the drum. He focused on the situation not far ahead. At this time, on the wall of the north gate, suddenly so many troops poured in. Many soldiers, who were dressed in common people's coarse clothes, but tied with khaki rags between their heads and arms, were frightened. They all turned around and looked at each other. They were a little timid. Seeing the soldiers look like this, a deputy general couldn't help but say angrily, "Keep your mouth shut for me." If there are any people who waver in the morale of the army, they immediately drag them out and cut off a group of worthless things. The soldiers are so scared. All the soldiers heard the words and quickly closed their mouths. No one dared to say more, but the panic and fear could not be covered up. If you look closely at the whole city wall, there are no more than 100 people. They can only guard the edge of the city wall. They're really weak. As the army of Yanbei City got closer and closer, the deputy general turned angry and looked at the general guarding the city. Of course, these were just their self-appointed officials. "General, they have reached the base of the city wall. Shall we open the gate and let some people go out to fight, or—" The man who was called the general wore a suit of armor, but he didn't wear a helmet. He was square-mouthed and broad-nosed, but his face was still calm. "As for us, we don't want to open the city gate for death. Let's hurry up and ask someone to get the pepper noodles prepared before, as well as the raw oil and torches. We can't forget any of them." I don't believe it. It's not enough for them to drink a pot, yes. Mo Shanghua's eyes didn't react to the city wall. He didn't even use the archery technique commonly used in marching and fighting. So he let the army fight all the way to the city wall, and his face suddenly changed. No way. No. A word of flour on the street just took off. Mo Zhang's face on one side also suddenly changed, and their voices suddenly overlapped. Yin Beicheng looked at them with an unidentified face. What's wrong? Isn't it full of momentum? Having said that, there was no fluctuation in the bottom of his eyes, as if it had been expected for him. Mo Shanghua and Ma Jiang both turned their eyes and looked at each other. Sure enough, they saw almost the same look on the opposite side, but only for a moment they withdrew their eyes. Mo Shanghua's eyes turned to some soldiers who had already arrived under the city wall, and his face was slightly worried. "It's too smooth. I'm afraid I've got the plan to invite you into the urn." At that time, some soldiers had built the ladder on the wall and climbed along the ladder to the people of the wall. However, just after they poked their heads over the wall, the soldiers scattered the chili powder sealed in sacks from their side. Although the soldier who just climbed up was on guard, it was the first time that he saw this way. He was caught off guard, covered his eyes, and cried bitterly. He could not even hold the sword in his hand. The soldiers of the rebellion army took advantage of this opportunity to mend their swords. Even if they screamed and fell down the ladder and the city wall more than 10 meters high, some of them didn't have to wait for the army to mend their swords. As a result, most of them died in pieces. Unfortunately, some of them would fall down several people. What's more, they would be killed because there are so many generals, they accidentally step on the fallen people and die. No one expected that the enemy would make such a number of shady, for a time, countless casualties. Fortunately, Wang's deputy general, who led them, was not stupid. He immediately asked him to adjust his strategy. When he was about to climb the ladder, he threw his sword out and killed the man who wanted to do the same thing on the edge of the city wall. Seeing that this method was not easy to use, the army poured oil along the ladder and then set fire to it. In this way, the soldiers on this side of Yin Beicheng were caught off guard, and they were killed and injured again. At the beginning, it was so disadvantageous. So many people were killed and injured that it was too late for the soldiers in charge of rescuing people to bring them back. For a moment, the momentum in the army was greatly reduced, and it was difficult for the war drums to call back the low momentum again. Although Mo, Jiang, and others were far away, they could see some situations clearly, especially Mo Jiang. When they looked here, they could not help but say, "Lord, the situation is not good at the moment. Please order that the last general be allowed to preside over it." Yin Beiqing looked at Mo Zhang's face and saw that he didn't wrinkle tightly. His eyes were full of anxiety. He wanted to go forward immediately and waved. "General Mo, go quickly." "Yes." Mo Jiang got Yin Beiqing's life. Almost nonstop took the whip in his hand, whipped the horse's ass, and drove the horse to run forward at a high speed. Mo Shanghua has been frowning at the situation in front of her, and the soldiers who have been brought back from the front are seriously injured. Their brows are even tighter. This is the result of Yin Mo Liao. It seems that he can do everything in order to achieve his goal. Thinking about it, she suddenly felt that her back was like a thorn in the back. She was very uncomfortable. She was alert. She glanced at the two strikers who had been following her and Yin Beiqing. Although the flowers on the street are so casual, they look back and look forward to the war situation without strabismus. Mo Shanghua sneers in her heart. If she just doubts, now she can be sure that Yin Mo Li sent them as supervisor. But she didn't attack immediately. She just looked at the war for a long time. She turned her head and said, "The war ahead is so bad. There are countless deaths and injuries, and there are not enough military doctors. Lord, I really can't bear so many patients to die in vain. I hope you will allow me to come forward to help. If you can save one, you can save another." Before Yin Beiqing said anything, one of the pioneers behind suddenly changed his eyes and said, "The princess is the body of thousands of gold. She has been in the army for many days and has been extremely wronged. The ordinary military doctors are doomed to death. It's extremely dangerous. How can you go there?" Another forward saw this and echoed, "Yes, princess, this is absolutely impossible. The flower head on the road also does not return. The vision is firm. My intention has decided." At that time, Yin Beiqing just looked back at Xiangma Shanghua. His face was full of disapproval, and he was still a bit angry. "Nonsense! How can I let you take such a risk?" "No, I'm determined not to." One of the strikers obviously relaxed a little. The flowers on the street saw this. The faint light in their eyes flickered slightly, and their faces were blocked by their necks. They were particularly stubborn. "Can't you let me watch these people die?" "Wang Yi, I'm a doctor. I'm kind-hearted. I can't just watch others die." Yin Beiqing was speechless for a long time, and then he saw his eyes move, as if he had thought out a solution. You and the two of you, go up and help, bring the wounded back, let the princess see, and then send them to the rear. In addition to the two strikers, he also left hundreds of people to protect him. Therefore, he directly followed a few of them, including the two strikers. "Deputy Commander, that's fine. Just now also emotional Mo Shanghua, but at the moment just a little thought will gladly accept. Even the chance to speak do not give the two strikers." At this point, the two forwards looked at each other for a long time, but none of them moved. After a long time, one of them said, "Deputy Commander, we are sent to help your highness, not ordinary soldiers. How can we do such a thing and ask the deputy commander to take back his life?" Yin Beiqing touched his nose and looked at them innocently. "But this is what I want you to help. Why don't you listen to me? I'm a woman, but I know that military orders are like mountains. If I disobey them, I have to deal with them by military law." Although they were not willing to accept it, they were afraid of the appearance of Yin Beiqing, so they had to get off the horse. They carried a stretcher and rushed into the front camp with the other two. At this time, as soon as Mo Jiang arrived at the foot of the city wall, he took a close look at the current situation, quickly adjusted his new tactics, and pulled back the ladder. As for the burnt one, there was no way. The previous catapult was afraid of injuring the soldiers climbing the ladder by mistake. At this time, Mo Jiang transferred all the people back to control the catapult with all his strength. One by one, he ran to move 2 palm-sized big bluestones and smash them to the north of the city. In this way, the method of insurrecting the army is of no use, and the casualties on Mahjong's side are naturally reduced. Although the casualties were small, the previous number of casualties was still not small. The people who went to rescue, as well as the 2 strikers, had already run 3 or 4 times after a while, and they were sweating. So many times, they put a seriously injured soldier down from the stretcher. They could not bear to sit on the spot, so they had to rest. The place where the two men were at this time was temporarily set up for military doctors to rescue the wounded. At this time, there were many casualties and many seriously injured people were lying around them. However, because there were too few military doctors, no military doctor was free to come, no matter how many people around them cried. And the two men turned a blind eye to the general, just to rest. Is resting far away, then saw Mo Shanghua to carry the medicine box to come over, after death did not follow a person. They looked at each other and stood up. Mo Shanghua squatted down in front of one of the seriously injured and unconscious soldiers of the two of them. He didn't lift his head and said to them, "Come here and help me lift him up." At the moment, they were basically wailing in pain, and no one would have the energy to pay attention to them. Therefore, they quickly understood and went forward, one helping to lift the man up, the other handing things to her. "What does your highness want you to do?" Mo Shanghua untied the soldier's skirt and put the medicine on the man's chest. He lowered his voice, using the voice that only two people could hear. The forward who supported the soldier raised his eyes and glanced at Mo Shanghua. He saw that her eyes were low and calm. Obviously, he had already guessed their identity, so he didn't hide it. He also lowered his voice to the lowest level. "Protect the princess under your highness's command. Protect me." Mo flower hand action done with a flash. Lift eyes straight at that forward to see a look, said as surveillance. Afraid is more appropriate. The man bowed his head and did not retort. On the street, the color of light mockery increased instead of decreasing. If I didn't do what he said, or was it a temporary defection? The man's eyes flashed, but his face was a little smile. "What is the princess saying?" "Our orders are just to protect and assist you. As for the others, I'm afraid you have to ask your highness." Although the words say so, but Mo Shanghua is clear in his eyes to see a bit of a flash of killing. It seems that they are not only monitoring, they are afraid that as long as she has a little change, they will kill immediately. On the street, the beautiful eyes like flowers and wells coagulated a thin layer of frost, but they couldn't see anything different. That's good. As soon as the words came down, a military doctor came in with a medicine box and a curtain. Seeing the flowers on the street, he bent over and saluted and went to one side to treat the patient. Mo Shanghua just bandaged the wound for the soldier at this time. So she picked up the medicine box and went to another slightly injured soldier. Seeing this, the two strikers did not stay, so they took the stretcher and left quickly. Mo Shanghua looked back at the curtain that had been thrown up and down because of the two people's departure. Then she looked down at the residual white powder in the palm of her hand. She wiped the palm with a handkerchief. After the powder was wiped clean, it seemed as if nothing had happened. She put away the handkerchief and dropped her eyes to treat the injured. She didn't believe any of what the man said just now. I'm afraid it's their protection, assistance, and surveillance. As for these two things, I don't think his words are so nice, but his eyes won't lie. I'm afraid Yin Moli's original words can only be, if there's a change, there's no amnesty. In this case, these two-time bombs cannot be left. At that time, with Mo Zhang's personal command, the situation had improved a lot, and the number of casualties had also dropped. However, the casualties of the chaotic army were extremely heavy. As soon as the city gate was damaged by the siege vehicle, it could be opened. There are only a few hundred people on the city wall. Suddenly, a large number of people poured out from nowhere. It seemed that there were 2,000 people. What's more terrifying is that they all carry bows and arrows on their backs. The arrows are all specially made. When they take a torch, a bunch of flames will light up at the place where they cut their heads. At the same time, a confused soldier came to Yanbei City and knelt down on one knee. "Deputy Commander, no good. General Wu failed to conquer Shimen and suffered heavy losses. Moreover, the enemy seems to know that you are here, and they have transferred all Shimen's soldiers and horses." "What?" Yin Beicheng suddenly widened his eyes, and his face was full of panic and fear. "This." Before I finished, I saw that countless stars appeared on the wall in front of me, and the sky was full of them. If you look at them carefully, they are flaming rockets. As for where they fall, they're the soldiers under the wall. Thousands of rockets fell straight down, and the soldiers at the bottom were unprepared. Countless people were turned into ghosts under the arrows. If they were not shot at the key person, their armor clothes would be instantly ignited, rolling on the ground, crying bitterly. In addition, it was not a barren place outside the city, and some plants were planted sparsely around the city. In this way, almost a small area outside the city was ignited by the fire. However, because the plants were planted 10 meters away from the city wall, no matter how fierce the fire was around, all parts of the city wall were safe. However, in less than half an hour, the troops brought by Yanbei City were destroyed by this wave after wave of fire, and the morale of the troops dispersed. Many generals were pale after seeing the tragedy of the people around them. If they had not done this, there would have been a death penalty. They almost wanted to flee in a hurry. However, the rocket did not stop the posture, and even some have not far in front of Yanbei. Withdraw quickly. Go to call them all back. They are all like this. What else to fight? Yin North City Mao Bottom flashed dignified, but the face was full of panic and fear. Go to find the princess again, quick, said. He pretended to be anxious to kick a soldier. But the soldier didn't dare to say more and ran away in a hurry. At this time, under the city wall, the two strikers originally rushed in to save people. But as soon as they got in, they caught up with the fall of the rocket. At first, they were able to resist, but later, they didn't have half of their strength, and they couldn't show half of their martial arts by all means. Without martial arts, how could they resist the rocket? In a short time, they were killed by the arrow. Before they died, their last thought was flowers on the street. Must be flowers on the street. This little bitch. In order to save some soldiers, Mo Zhang's clothes were burnt. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and put out the burning clothes in time, so that he didn't hurt himself. General, the deputy commander has an order for you to withdraw quickly. General, please retreat quickly. General, the soldier who came to deliver the message cried out again and again, almost breaking his throat. Mo Jiang shot a rocket at himself, blocked it with an arrow, and then flew forward to block the rocket in front of Deputy General Wang. Then he turned around and tried his best to say in a loud voice. All the soldiers listened to the order, withdraw quickly. Many generals heard that they had been released. They were busy with speeding up their escape. They were so embarrassed that they couldn't even care about the wounded. Yin Beiqing sighed. In order to deduce the usual wayward and wanton appearance of the Lord, his face has no color, and he almost wants to escape back to the barracks immediately. Even Mo Jiang and them have to abandon it. Mo Shanghua naturally cooperates with others and makes an appearance of death. The villain cooperates seamlessly, and others only believe in it. In his heart, he has a little more disgust and dissatisfaction with Yin Beiqing. After waiting for Mahjong, they all changed their heads and fled quickly. Unexpectedly, the chaotic army, which was only defending but not attacking, opened the gate of the city and sent a team of people to chase them out. Mo Jiang looked back at the soldiers and horses, and his sword eyebrows could not help but wrinkle deeply. Lord, they are coming. It seems that they have at least 1,000 people and horses. All of us are only over 1,000 people and horses, and they're all disabled patients. If they're caught up, they are afraid that they will die. We should get rid of them quickly. I know. Yin Beiqing looked back at a large number of pursuers behind him, quickly raised the whip in his hand, and whipped the horse's ass again. Lord, where are we going now? Mo Shanghua sees this, also made an effort to smack the horse buttocks, and Yin Beiqing's current position is equal. Yin Beiqing didn't turn his head and said, Of course, I'll go back to camp. My brother left 1,000 people there. By that time, those bastards will be dead. As soon as the words came out, the soldier who had just come to report whipped his horse's ass and rushed to not far behind Yanbei City. Lord, the barracks can't go back. When I came here, I heard that the barracks had been attacked by the enemy. Our food and grass were burned, and the 1,000 people who were stationed in the barracks were not safe. So we would be killed if we went back. What? The horses under Yin Beiqing's body did not stop and still ran fast, but he couldn't help looking at the man. His face was full of disbelief. Do you mean that I don't even have a place to hide now? It's over. It seems that Wang is really. As he spoke, he looked despairing, as if he was in a state of extreme fear. When Mo Jiang heard the words, his sword eyebrows were tightly wrinkled, and he asked, "What about the Second Highness? What's the situation at the South Gate where he is now? And the East Gate? What's the matter now?" "Excuse me, General. I don't know. I only know that the war in the West City is terrible. The situation is not clear now. It seems that we can't count on others." The flowers in the street smell the words, and their eyebrows can't help frowning. Under such circumstances, the only way is to escape to a safe place. In a long memory, the most urgent task now is to get rid of them first. Yin Beiqing looked back at the pursuers behind him. He was more and more frightened. They're chasing so hard. How can they throw them away? It's over. I'm afraid it's really over this time. The loss of so many soldiers and horses made Mo Jiang's heart very heavy. At the moment, when he heard that Yin Beiqing had shaken his army's heart, he could not help looking cold. "Vice General Wang, you protect the prince and the princess first. I'll cut off the queen." He suddenly pulled the reins, turned the horse's head, and yelled, "Han Xianxiu, take the remaining 300 of you. Let's find a way to get rid of them." Because Han Xianfeng had been dissatisfied with Yanbei City for a long time, he heard the words, and his face was half angry, but he didn't stop. He directly followed him. "Yes, I will obey you." As they spoke, more than 200 people turned their horses around and stood in the middle of the road, waiting for the enemy to arrive. Yin Beiqing's eyes, full of fear and clarity, slightly missed the dark color, but his face was relieved. "General Mo is very clear. I will ask my brother to give you a lot of rewards some other day. Hurry up, let's hurry up." At that time, it was almost dusk. When Yin Beiqing and his party got rid of their pursuers and took a rest in a desolate forest, it was already dark. Because it was easy to find out how to make a fire, Mo Shanghua asked not to make a fire. Even the torches were only lit a few times, and the remaining 400 soldiers could only live on cold and hard food. "Is there something wrong with my hunger? This kind of dry steamed bread tastes delicious." Yin Beiqing sat under the tree and looked at the dry cakes he had eaten most of. Few of them didn't complain. Mo Shanghua also held a cake bait in his hand, his face light, and said, "In this situation, you can still eat this, which is delicious." Qin Lin touched the back of his head with a smile, and his face was simple and honest. "When I was in the countryside, I couldn't even eat this kind of steamed bread. Now I can eat it. It's good." "You're not only speaking well now, you're also speaking well." When the flowers in the street heard the words, they could not help but raise their lips and smile, which was quite a bit of bitterness. How to have a smile on others. Seeing this, Yin Beiqing turned his lips and muttered in a very low voice. Mo Shanghua's ear power is always good. Although Yin Beiqing's voice is small, it still comes in her ears. Her lips are slightly curved, but she doesn't know. Yin Beiqing's heart was sour, and his mood was not so good. He ate the rest of the cake with a few bolt, his cheeks bulging. Mo Shanghua handed over the water bag and put the rest of the cake aside for the time being, with a slightly positive face. "Well, now is not the time for joking and relaxing. Since we have all eaten it, let's talk about the business first. Qin Lin, go and ask Han Xianxiu to come here." "Yes." Qin Lin immediately put the rest of the cake into his mouth and got up. Mo Shanghua turns her eyes and takes a look at Yin Beiqing at the moment. Their eyes meet for a short time, and then they seem to have reached a consensus. Tacitly, they move their eyes away, as if nothing happened. "Lord, Princess." Han Xianxiu bowed slightly and saluted. Mo Shanghua politely nodded, quietly looked at the person in front of him, then said, "Sit." "Yes." Han Xianxiu looks like he's only about 20 years old. He's still very young. He has all the impulses and passion of young people, but he's not stupid in nature. If he's trained well, he should be a useful talent in the future. Unfortunately, he's sent by Yin Moli. Yin Beiqing took another cake and ate it. He said, Han Xianxiu, if you have something to say to the princess, I don't know much about this kind of thing. If you tell me, I can't understand it. In the past few days, Han Xianfeng has been used to Yin Beicheng, so he has no objection. Seeing that Han Xianfeng was not prejudiced, Mo Shanghua said, How many people are left here, and how much have we lost before? How much food is left in the army? Referring to this matter, Han Xianfeng's face darkened a little, and he looked very heavy. The last general has counted before. Our intact people are less than 400 now, and there are more than 300 disabled people. Among the remaining more than 2,000 people, including those who died in the war and were seriously injured and scattered, we have to count them in the future. The 2 pioneers sent by His Highness have disappeared, so they must have fought death. As for food and grass. At this point, Han Xianxiu can't help showing his embarrassment. Our grain camp has been burned down. Now, the soldiers can only carry dry food for 1 day at most. Those bastards, if they can't beat us, will do some dirty tricks. Yin Beicheng listened and could not help biting the dry cake in his hand, his face full of anger. Speaking of this, Han Xianfeng's face became more and more ugly, and he could not help but scold. The Dalit is the Dalit, and the tricks used are naturally not noble. Take it easy. Mo Shanghua glanced at the 2 people, thought about it, and then said, What about the people who were sent out to look for your highness? Now there's news. And General Zhang, who attacked the East Gate. What's the news over there? Han Xianfeng shook his head and looked irritable. None of the people sent out came back. They must have been cut off on the road. Now, we are really on the verge of extinction. Speaking of the back, he has been irritable to grab the hair, but do not wait for the flowers to open. His eyes suddenly bright, hurriedly took out a map from the sleeve, said, I remember. Mo Shanghua and Yin Beicheng are all looking at him with an unidentified face, as well as the map that hasn't been unfolded in his hand, waiting for him. Han Xianxiu unfolded the map and sent it to Huayin Beicheng in Mo's hang. He said, before he left, he had prepared a map of Anzhou and its surrounding area in advance. Most of the reasons why we are at a dead end are that we are not familiar with the location. Now, with this map, we can find the most distance from Yuzhou will be safe for the time being when we get close to the land, and then we'll escape through the night. Han Xianxiu was sent to the role of Mo Shanghua's heart, is also largely aware of, therefore, there's no big waves on the face, just nodded. That's right, this place should not be too far away from Yuzhou district at that time. In the transfer of some soldiers from the city in the past, General Mo, there must be able to take a breath. Han Xianfeng's face was just filled with joy. When he mentioned Mo Jiang, his face was immediately diluted and lowered. There are so many chaotic troops chasing after him. It must be that General Mo and Wang's deputy general are already more evil than good. Mo Shanghua was silent for a long time. Then he said, If your highness is successful and the city of Anzhou is broken, these pursuers will not dare to pursue. The danger of General Mo can be solved naturally, or we could go to help faster. That's all we can do now. Han Xianxiu sighed a little, nodded heavily, and said nothing. Seeing this, Mo Shanghua asked Qin Lin to take a torch and light up the map. For a long time, her slender fingertips stopped at a position on the map. According to the route mark on the map, we should be at this position now, which is 30 miles away from Anzhou. As she spoke, her fingertips began to move along the route on the map. When she arrived at a place marked as Liangsheng, she stopped. This is a big city within a 100-li radius, the largest under Yuzhou jurisdiction and the closest to our present location. According to the law, there are at least 3,000 soldiers in the city. We just need to go along this road, and it only takes 2 hours to get there. Han Xianfeng nodded thoughtfully, pointed his fingertips to an intersection behind the point of Mo Shanghua, and said, Only there are 2 roads to Liangsheng. One is from here, passing by the county in the east, and the other is from the west. It seems that the distance between the 2 roads is almost the same. Which direction should we go in the end? Mo Shanghua's eyes also looked at the place Han Xianfeng pointed out, and his eyes were shining slightly. At first glance, it really looks like this, but east and west, but one is under the jurisdiction of Yuzhou and the other is under the jurisdiction of Anzhou. The difference between the two is not small. However, the hands of those mobs should not be so long. They can reach Anzhou. Han Xianxiu, in your opinion? Han Xianfeng frowned and thought hard for a moment, then hesitated and said, after listening to the princess's words, the general found that he had made the old problem of not thinking about the problem comprehensively. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that our pursuers should not be far away. There are only 200 people in General Mo's side. Even if they can't resist it for a long time, I'm afraid they will catch up soon to avoid the safety of princes and concubines. I think it's better for me to take people to pretend to be princes and concubines and flee from the west, while princes and concubines go from the east under the jurisdiction of Anzhou. Princes and concubines should know that there is an old saying that the most dangerous place is the safest place. Mo Shanghua originally thought that Han Xianxiu was just the result of Yin Moli's reputation of treating his younger brother harshly in order to avoid being talked about. He should not have been given any special task. Now, it's clear in his heart to hear him say so. Yin Moli is really cautious. It's not enough to have those two pioneers. There's a pioneer here. Just thinking about it, he saw that Han Xianxiu's eyes swept towards her quietly. The implication is self-evident. The flower eye color on the Mo done time a Lien. Turn the eye to see to Yin Beicheng. Don't enter the tiger's den to get the tiger's son. Lord, I and Han Xianxiu's idea coincide. Yin Beicheng opened the water bag, poured a drink, cleared his throat, and opened his mouth as if he were very cautious. Since you two think so, there must be your reason. Just listen to you. In this case, Han Xianxiu, I'd like to ask you to pass on the order. When we have a cup of tea to rest, we'll hurry. Mo Shanghua gives the torch back to Qin Lin and orders him to go on. Yin Beicheng agreed that Han Xianfeng had no reason to disobey his orders. He immediately got up and said, the Inn General will obey his orders. By the way, the Inn General will find two people who are similar to the shape of the prince and the princess, and ask the prince and the princess to cooperate and exchange clothes with them. I know. Han Xianfeng, go and be busy. Yin Beicheng waved his hand and put the last mouthful of cake into his mouth. As for the next, Mo Shanghua and Yin Beicheng deliberately did not have too much intersection, so as to avoid the doubt of Han Xianfeng. Then it was very smooth to find two people who were similar to them, exchange clothes with them, and the marching order, let the two fake people walk at the top, while Yin Beicheng and Mo Shanghua were dressed in ordinary soldiers' clothes, followed them, and when they got to the fork in the road marked on the map, they directly divided the remaining people into two, respectively from east to west. Two different places go their separate ways. When it was still more than half of the way to Donglin, the team that had gone quickly slowed down under the instruction of Yin Beicheng. He grabbed the reins of the horses under him, and his tone was rather casual. It's too dark here, and you can't see anything clearly. You'd better slow down, otherwise, how can you fall into the pit? At present, in addition to Mo Shanghua of Yin Beicheng, there are no other vanguard deputy generals in the team. They're all big-headed soldiers. With Yin Beicheng's words, they dare not say anything. They are busy and obedient and slow down. Mo Shanghua looks sideways at Yin Beicheng, who looks like a dandy yuan in front of Chong Ri people. Her eyebrows don't change at all. She just turns her head and looks ahead as if she doesn't see anything. At that time, it was late at night, and there was silence everywhere, except for the disorderly step of soldiers and horses on the ground, and the panting of soldiers and soldiers. There was terrible silence everywhere, even the sound of cicadas and frogs. Originally, he was riding at the front of the team. Yin Beicheng suddenly tightened the reins, and the horse stopped and stopped. When some soldiers were still in doubt, they saw that the people around them all stopped their horses one after another and stopped in line with Yanbei City. Yin Beicheng was riding on a high horse. Most of his face was in the dark. Only half of his face was reflected by the moonlight. However, the scarlet birthmark on his cheek became more and more demonic and terrifying at this time. It was so vivid that it seemed to be stained by real blood. A layer of treacherous atmosphere gradually appeared in the air. Kill. For a long time, Yin Beiqing cage in the dark, that bipolar bright deep eyes just flash a faint light. Thin lips lightly spit out a word, but let a person can't ignore, only feel cold hair all over the body seems to stand up with this sentence. With such momentum, Yin Beiqing and Yin Beicheng, who were greedy for life and afraid of death, were just two people, and they could not be associated with each other in any case. As soon as the words came to an end, those who were still in doubt and astonishment saw a flash of white light in the hands of their comrades and arms beside them. By the next moment, they had no time to think. In Mo Shanghua's eyes, every soldier suddenly raised his hand and drew a dagger from his wrist. Then, he quickly wiped the necks of the people around him. Unexpectedly, all the people around him fell down in an instant. On the clean white blade of the killing soldier's hand, he was instantly dyed red by blood. From head to toe, Yin Beiqing didn't even look back, as if he was extremely confident of the people behind him and didn't worry that they would make any mistakes. Shua and Shua, after dealing with Yin Moli's soldiers, they quickly adjusted their formation and knelt down behind Yin Beiqing. In this process, they didn't even make a single sound, and their movements were extremely light. All the people in the blood department of the subordinates see the master. Mo Ling, who had not seen for a long time, suddenly came out of the crowd and knelt in the front of the queue, bowing respectfully. Under the bright moonlight, Mo Shanghua looks at Yanbei City at that time. In her calm eyes, she looks a little. The feeling in her heart can only be expressed in words. She always knew that Yin Beiqing was powerful, but she never thought that he was so powerful. It seemed that so many people were just a branch of his staff. What was his real strength? Although it's not a long way to Donglin, Mo's Hang Flower in Yanbei City wasted a lot of time to rest. When it was about to reach Donglin, the sky was already white. Mo's Hang Flower in Yanbei City and the soldiers were tired. Mo Shanghua rubbed his forehead wearily, but he still raised his voice and said, "Everyone, we are sticking to it. When there's a cup of tea, it's time to come to the east. At that time, you can have a rest." Yes. All the soldiers answered weakly, and the tired color on their faces turned better. Yin Beicheng is also pale, eyelids have drooped down, seems to be asleep at any time in general. This section of the road they took is an official road, which is open between the dense forests. Beside the road are lush trees and sparse vegetation. It must be an excellent place for Tibetans. It seems that Yin Moli chose a good place. Although the flowers on the street are tired, their eyes are still turning around from time to time, keeping in mind the surrounding terrain and the growth direction of trees. Just thinking about it, Yin Beiqing suddenly didn't know when he came to her side and quietly put a dagger in her hand. His voice was very light and whispered in her ear, "Be careful." As soon as the words came to an end, there were many noisy footsteps in the originally quiet woods. Then, a large group of people in the clothes of the mob poured out from the deep forest, each with a sharp blade in his hand. In a short time, Yin Beiqing was surrounded by a group of people. As for the specific number, if you really count it, it would be more than 500 people at least. However, different from the mob, these people are all wrapped in black veil at the moment, and the leader does not deliberately stand in the front. For a moment, it is difficult to distinguish. When Yin Beiqing and his party, who were all tired, saw this, they all looked frightened. The soldiers all pulled out their swords in a hurry, and their eyes turned around like they had no backbone, as if they were scared to the extreme. Yin Beiqing didn't have a sword on him. At the sight of the battle, he was so scared that he almost fell off his horse. "Princess, princess, what should we do now?" Mo Shanghua's complexion is not very good either. Almost instantly, she clenched Yin Beiqing's dagger and then quietly handed it to her. She coagulated her eyes and scanned the mobs who surrounded them. In addition to these, her eyes more or a bit surprised, a bit cold. That day, the ambush place Yin Moli said was east-facing. Now, before he arrived east-facing, he moved his hand. It seems that he doesn't trust himself at all. He is really an old fox. The so-called mobs didn't give Yin Beicheng and others too much breathing time. The next breath was under the command of a mob of the mob. All of them surged up. The blades in their hands were reflected by the morning light, and there were bursts of terrible cold light. However, when a mob rushed to the soldiers and just wanted to fight, they saw that all the soldiers who were scared and flustered suddenly turned their faces. They were covered with a layer of cold air, and their parry skills were all the same. They were all deadly with knives, ruthless and merciless, and they didn't take half of the mud and water. It seemed that they had received special training. No, they are not ordinary soldiers. Yin Moli, who was mixed in the crowd, was caught by a man dressed as an ordinary soldier when he rushed in front of Yin Beicheng. The more he fought with him, the more frightened he was. After he was solved, he was shocked to see the fighting and the casualties of the people around him. It seems that he has also been cheated. Thinking of this, his eyes quickly crossed the crowd and fixed on the flower. At that time, Emo Shanghua was only wearing the clothes of ordinary soldiers. Now he is fighting in the crowd, and he has spent a lot of time looking for them. Although Emo Shanghua is a woman, she is delicate and thin. Now she is in the scuffle, but she has no problem. The dagger she just held has been put away by her, and she has replaced it with a long sword from the hand of the mob she just killed. When the sword falls, a dead soul will fall. It was Yin Beicheng who had just been around him, but he could not find it now. Chang Ri's bodyguard, who was beside Yin Moli, saw the man who was fighting with him. Then he came to Yin Moli's side and said, "Your Highness, we've been tricked. These people are not sent by us before, and they can't be under King Yu." "I know." Yin Moli got rid of the entanglement of one person and withdrew from the battle circle with the bodyguard temporarily. His face stained with blood was very ugly. Yinbei's city is gone. When the bodyguard heard that he was busy with his eyes, he also searched around the crowd. Finally, he fixed his eyes on Emo Shanghua. "Your Highness, in my opinion, these people are the killers hired by Princess Yu from other places. King Yu must have been protected by her first. She must have guessed that the person who framed her was deliberately retaliating against you. It seems that we have underestimated her." Yin Emo, a pair of eagle eyes dyed a bit of gloomy color, voice low and dull, spit out a word. After he found out that Emo Shanghua was very different from before, he took more precautions when he cooperated with him later. He also expected that Emo Shanghua would not be at her mercy in everything, and might do some tricks in some small things to seek benefits for himself. But he could not imagine that what she wanted was to destroy his plan, or she wanted his life more. However, they now have 500 people, and Emo Shanghua is only preparing 200. It is still uncertain who will win or lose. The bodyguard wiped the blood on his cheek. "If we can't find King Yu, all our plans for today will be ruined. Your Highness, what should we do now?" Yin Mo's face flashed a bit of evil, and his eyes fell on the flowers in the crowd like a blade. "Now, of course, it's for my good siblings. Since Yin Beicheng and Emo Shanghua have reached a consensus, no matter whether Yin Beicheng is a real fool or a fake fool, it is impossible to see his own wife captured but indifferent." The bodyguard followed Yin Emo Li's eyes to see in the past, immediately understood, and said, "I understand." With that, he clenched the bloody sword in his hand and was about to kill the flowers on the street. "No, I will catch her myself." Yin Mo Li Ying's eyes narrowed dangerously, and then he didn't wait for the guard to open his mouth, so he put up a sword to fight into the crowd. Yin Moli's martial arts are superb. Even if the people who enter today are actually from the Dark Guard camp where Yin Beicheng has practiced for many years, when he meets Yin Moli, he will inevitably be defeated. In a moment, he breaks through many obstacles and comes to Mo Shanghua. At that time, Mo Shanghua just beat back a person, just took back the sword, then felt a very strong breath behind her, straight to her back. In her heart, she reacted quickly and turned back suddenly. Then she saw that the same people in coarse clothes and veiled were sticking a long sword to her chest. She quickly held the sword against her chest. Dang, dang, dash. The tip of the man's sword was blocked by the edge of Mo Shanghua's sword, but the impact was too big. Mo Shanghua immediately stepped back and hit a tree behind her heavily. Just after such a collision, she felt her heart was full of blood and her strength was almost relaxed. The man didn't let her go. Instead of taking back the sword in his hand, his strength became stronger and stronger. Mo Shanghua's hand holding the hilt of the sword doesn't work hard again, and the green tendons at the wrist are springing up and supporting. In the meantime, she can't help but raise her eyes and take a glance. With this glance, she suddenly recognized the person opposite, Yin Moli. Even if his eyes turned to ashes, she remembered them. It seems that he should be aware of the absence of Yanbei City now, and want to catch her to force Yanbei City out. No, she must not lose to Yin Moli, let alone break the game because of her. With this in mind, Mo Shanghua quickly uses her internal power to put it between her wrists, and turns Yin Moli's sword body's strength with skillful force. Then she quickly leaves the tree like lightning and runs out of the battle circle. Yin Moli's goal is to spend on the street. Seeing her running away at the moment, she naturally catches up with her quickly. Mo Shanghua was not far away from the war zone, but was caught up by Yin Mo when he got to the edge where there were fewer people, and they fell into a fight. Although Yin Moli's martial arts are strong, his wounds a few days ago have not been healed. Now he is a certain distance away from the war zone, and there is no interference around him. For a moment, he can fight with Yin Moli. Two people is a confrontation. Yin Moli take this time, and the street flower ear-side low voice asked, "Where is Yin Beicheng?" Mo Shanghua uses a long sword to block Yin Moli and sweeps it to his hem, but Yin Moli hides it. When Mo Shanghua gets up, he doesn't know what to do, but he breaks through Mo Shanghua's defense. He grabs her wrist and cuts her hand behind him. With the sword in his hand, he falls to the ground and reaches him. The flowers on the street were so clamped down, but they didn't struggle immediately. They were half flustered. They only said faintly, "Your Second Highness has great powers, and even such a big situation can be laid down. How come you can't even find the right master now?" This was ironic. Now, she said it in such a light tone that Yin Moli was as good as holding his ear and laughing at his miscalculation. Yin Moli's eyes became more and more dark, and he also used some strength to grasp the wrist of Mo Shang. "Aren't you the same, no matter how crafty? Now it's still in my hand? Now that I'm here, it's impossible for me to return empty-handed. You'd better be smart and tell the whereabouts of Yin Beicheng earlier. In this way, even if you betrayed me earlier, I can still see it for your sake and give you a happy way to die." The wrist was already pinched red, but the flower on the street didn't cry. There was a smile on his face. "Yin Moli, you are too confident. I guess you haven't seen the war carefully from the beginning." Yin Moli has always been confident of his own people. He did not even raise his head. He only stared at the flowers on the street with his eyes full of evil. There is a great disparity in the forces. Besides, my people are comparable to those who are useless. You'd better not take this opportunity to delay time. Your tricks are useless in front of me. The flowers in the street smell the words, but the corner of their lips increases the radiant of sarcasm, not in words, as if they are talking to such a conceited person as Yin Moli, which will reduce their intelligence quotient. I don't know why. Yin Moli saw this, and his heart jumped. He felt that something had exceeded his expectation. He was so conceited that he could not help but turn his eyes to see the war situation in front of him. However, the scene in front of him was very different from what he expected. When he just fought with those people, he realized that their martial arts skills were extraordinary, but because they were very easy for him to solve, he overestimated the ability of his subordinates. The 500 people he brought with him, who had been carefully trained, could not match the people on the other side of Mo Shanghua. Especially, they were all able to stand in the way of 1 block and 3 blocks. Now the war has just begun, and he is on his side. It has obviously shown a losing trend. At that time, near a tree outside the war, Mo Ling watched the situation everywhere and lowered his voice, saying, "Lord, now they are losing, but there is still no trace of the remaining 500 people. Will Yin Mulligan not trust the princess and ambush the 500 people on the road to the west, As you speculate, Yin Beiqing squatted on the side of Mo Ling's body. The phoenix's eyes, which were caged under the broad black cloak, were shining. It seemed that he was thinking about something. After a long time, he saw that the thin lip petals embedded in his lower jaw were open. Wait a minute. As he spoke, his eyes could not help searching in the war situation, but because of the angle, he could not find the trace of flowers on the street. His eyebrows suddenly wrinkled slightly, and his heart suddenly jumped, and he felt very uneasy on Mo Shanghua's side. While Yin Moli was distracted, she took the opportunity to break free from his control and stabbed him in the chest with her sword. Fortunately, Yin Moli responded in time, which avoided the fatal blow. Not only that, he was shocked and angry in his heart, and he was merciless. Mo Shanghua's right arm was immediately attacked by a sword, and the blood instantly dyed half-red sleeves. Looking up, at this time, Yin Mo Li's eyes have been infected with a strong sense of killing. At the moment, he had only one idea in his mind. Today's strategy was wasted. He didn't even hurt half of Yin Beiqing's hair, and these are destroyed in the hands of Mo Shanghua. Her mind is so deep that she can't be used by him. Naturally, the only way to avoid future trouble is to kill her. Yin Moli, who had the intention to kill, knew that he couldn't resist. He quickly caught 2 silver needles between his fingers. The next second, the silver needles shot at him like an arrow in the air. After that, she didn't see how Yin Moli resisted. She quickly turned her lightness skill to the other end of the war. Yin Beiqing, who has been pursuing the trace of the flowers on the street. Only after the flowers on the street skimmed over the shadows of many trees did he accurately set his eyes on her. Before his sudden beating heart could recover, his eyes were stung by the dazzling red on the right arm of Mo Shanghua, and his whole body suddenly became angry. Mo Ling noticed the change of Yinbei City's atmosphere and looked along his line of sight. He saw that the flowers on the street were colored, and Yin Moli was chasing after him. He was shocked. He quickly raised his hand to hold Yinbei City. "Lord, Yin Moli is no better than others. You can't go out." At this moment, Mo Shanghua, who was running towards Yin Beiqing's hiding place, seemed suddenly aware of the breath in his eyes. He took a look at the tree they were hiding, and then turned around and ran towards the deep forest. Yin Moli naturally followed. Lord, seeing that Yinbei City was about to lose control, Mo Ling bit her teeth and jumped down from the tree. She also quickly passed in the direction of flowers on the street. "Protect the princess." As soon as the voice fell, several dark guards hurriedly solved the person in front of them and rushed to fight with Yin and Mo. With the help of Mo Ling and others, Mo Shanghua was finally able to breathe. Mo Ling's martial arts are stronger than Mo Shanghua's. With the help of the 3 secret guards, Yin Moli's physical strength gradually lost. Looking at the war situation at this time, the difference in the number of people between the 2 sides has not been far from the beginning. The people on Yin Moli's side tried to rush out of the war several times to help Yin Moli, but they were all entangled by the people on Yin Beiqing's side and couldn't get away at all. I'm afraid there's no room for turning this round. Yin Moli is unwilling to admit it, but the current situation does not allow him to be conceited. "Withdraw." He clenched his teeth and tried to kill the 2 dark guards. Then he yelled. However, the current situation is no longer a simple withdrawal. He can really withdraw the whole body. Yin Moli's bodyguard was scarred, but now he was still entangled by them. He could not help saying, "Master, subordinate poof." However, just in the middle of the words, he lost his life because he was separated from God and was put into his chest by a man's sword. If it is the trend has gone, Yin Mo Li see this, heart suddenly a lin, left hand suddenly a turn, a dart-shaped concealed weapon, then toward Mo Ling shot over. Taking advantage of Mo Ling's evasion, he wanted to run away. Mo Shanghua has been watching the battle. At this time, Yin Moli tries to run away and rushes forward. Yin Moli is unprepared and immediately gets a sword from Mo Shanghua. Yin Moli catches the hilt of the sword consciously and wants to slap Mo Hua with his backhand. Unexpectedly, Yin Beicheng, regardless of Mo Ling's dissuasion, rushes out and takes Yin Moli's hand. Yin Moli was injured, but he was still Yin Beicheng's opponent. The blood on his chest immediately dyed the whole front red, and he fell directly into the war. Fortunately, he didn't hit the edge of the knife, but was saved by his men. But Yin Beicheng didn't care about Yin Moli at the moment. He held the flowers tightly in his hand, and the black pupil covered by his cloak was full of heartache. Mo Shanghua recognized Yin Beicheng as the man at a glance. He suddenly lost the strength to struggle. Just as he relaxed, he suddenly thought of something. He struggled to get out of Yin Beicheng's arms. Yin Moli, hurry up, you can't let him run. Mo Ling smells speech, hurried to come over way. Princess, he just ran. Yin Beicheng looked up at the few Yin Moli people who were still struggling in the war situation and said, let him go. With that, his eyes fell on Mo Shanghua again. Seeing the blood on her right arm, his brow immediately wrinkled tightly. If he didn't want to, he would hold her horizontally. Then he would carefully put her on the horse's back. He would sit behind her and put her in his arms. He said, Mo Ling, you can clean up the mess. Don't leave anything alive. Yes, sir. What are you doing? Mo Shanghua half leans in Yin Beicheng's arms and looks at him with puzzled eyes. Hold on, Yin Beicheng asked in a low voice, and then he gave a hand to the horse's buttocks. The horse immediately ran with his feet up. He then explained in a low voice, your wound needs to be treated. Liangcheng is in front of you. I'll take you there first. Mo Shanghua then remembered that he had been injured. He looked down at his bleeding right arm, ordered several acupoints to stop bleeding, and then rested on Yin Beicheng's arms. However, she did not sleep last night. In addition to the road, it is more fighting, the body is very tired, so a relaxation, eyelids will be more heavy up, the head from time to time because of drowsiness light point. In a daze, she suddenly spewed out a sentence in a very low voice. Yin Beicheng, how can you expose your identity for me? At this time, her voice was very soft, not like the coldness and indifference of the ordinary day. In Yin Beicheng's eyes, she felt that her heart was about to melt. He couldn't help feeling a little tender between his eyebrows and eyes. He dropped his eyes and gave her a kiss on the top of her hair. Then he lifted his eyes and continued on his way. When he arrived at Liangcheng, he naturally entered the post station as King Yu. Until the wound on Mozhang Flower was treated and placed on the bed, he was still hovering in his mind what Mozhang Flower had just said vaguely. Because you are the most important. It took him a long time to gaze at her, and then he suddenly spat out a word very gently, and then he could not help kissing her on her white forehead, and then he fell asleep beside her contentedly. When I wake up, it's evening. She looked at the empty room and was about to get up when she accidentally pulled the wound. Subconsciously, she raised her hand to cover her right arm. Then she found that her right arm wound had been bandaged, her clothes had been changed, and she was clean. Now she's in a strange place. Yinbei City. She quickly lifted the quilt, rolled out of bed, looked around the room, and called out, Princess, are you awake? Slave Qin Lin, what can I do for you? As soon as the voice fell, I saw the figure of a man reflected outside the closed door. Mo Shanghua felt relieved. He opened the door and saw that it was Qin Lin outside. Then he said, Qin Lin, are we in Liangcheng? Yin, where's the Lord? Where is he now? Qin Lin has never been able to tell a lie. At the moment Mo Shanghua asked and directly pulled out, Wang Yi, he sent troops out, saying that he was going to save General Mo and Han Xianfeng. The flower on the street frowned tightly, and the bottom of his eyes was a little worried. How many people did he take? When did he go? And in which direction did he go? Don't worry, princess. Have a glass of water first. Qin Lin saw that the petals of flowers on the street were peeling, but he was so anxious that he poured a glass of water and said, The Lord took 2,000 people with him. He settled you down in the morning and went there in a hurry. It seemed that he was going to the west. By the way, the Lord has specially told you to take good care of your wounds. You're not allowed to leave the city before he comes back. Mo Shanghua took the tea, but did not drink it immediately, drooping his eyes and whispering thoughtfully. Shilling 2,000 people, that's good. Yin Moli asked her to go out that night. In the name of cooperation, Mo Shanghua told Yin Beiqing all about the things she had told her. Their actions in recent days were just scheming. Yin Beiqing had been unable to bear it. He had been trying to confuse Yin Moli and hide his identity. On the other hand, he wanted to see if the 500 people were the role of Huang Ke. When Yin Moli started ahead of time, Mo Shanghua had guessed the movement of the 500 people. Yin Moli didn't trust him so much that he didn't put all his hands in Donglin. The rest of them must be afraid of the rebellion of Mo Shanghua. Now, Yinbei City should be going to exterminate the 500 people. 2,000 people, that's enough for Yin Moli. The thought in the brain is almost the Mo Shanghua. This just held the tea to drink a few mouthfuls, just drank some. She raised her head again. By the way, over there in Anzhou, still no news? Qinlin shook his head. You guessed well, but there was no news. As they were talking, the master and the servant heard a sudden noise outside the door, a mixture of footsteps and the man's confused voice calling doctor. The flower in the street immediately put down the tea and went out. Sure enough, in the spacious backyard, two people dressed as ordinary soldiers were supporting Mo Jiang, who was covered with blood, and came in. They were followed by many soldiers. Each of them was more or less decorated, but they didn't know what they were doing. They just walked anxiously and cried, "Doctor, go. What if I'm a doctor? General, I can't do it." Mo Jiang, that's a qualified general. Mo Shanghua was very appreciative of Mo Jiang in her heart. Therefore, seeing that he was so hurt, she hurriedly followed him up and said, "I'm a doctor. I can save him. You carry him in quickly." Mo Shanghua used to be the only woman in the army. Naturally, everyone in the army recognized her and knew that she was a doctor. Hearing the words, she didn't care about anything else. She nodded and sent Mo Jiang to an empty room. "Qinlin, get my medicine box." Mo Shanghua hurried to keep up with him, looking back and telling him. Qinlin nodded hard and ran back to the room of Mo Shanghua. After a while, he took the medicine box back. At this time, the majestic Mahjong had already lost the day before yesterday. The armor on his body has been taken off, but his clothes have been glued together by blood stains. He can't open them at all. He can't check the wound. Seeing the situation, he skillfully took the scissors and cut off all his clothes. Without the shelter of clothes, the flowers on the street can clearly see the wounds on Mo Jiang's body. I saw that his strong body was covered with all kinds of wounds, including sword wounds, knife wounds, and many bruises. Some wounds are shallow and scabby, but some still exude a small amount of blood from time to time, and the wounds are particularly ferocious. Look at Mo Jiang's face again. It is as white as paper. Repeated at any time will not hold the general. This, after all, is to experience what kind of battle, but also how tenacious willpower to support this pair of broken body to fight. Mo Shanghua was shocked by the wound on Ma Jiang's body, and her heart suddenly became solemn. She started to deal with the wound very quickly. While she was dealing with the wound, she did not forget to say, "I can't leave now. You come here to write down the prescription quickly and go to boil the medicine quickly. However, your general's life will be lost." The soldiers hurriedly pushed out one of them and hurriedly found pen and paper. Okay, princess, you say? Ginseng, Artemisia, RG, Lotus Heart. Mo Flower's eyes did not move away from Mo Jiang's body, but still can accurately say the prescription. When Yin Beicheng came in with the doctor, he happened to see such a scene, and he was helpless. He wanted to let Mo Shanghua have a good rest, but she couldn't stay idle. After such a short time, she took things for herself again, which made him feel more and more distressed. Go to the West Wing first and see someone else. Yan Beicheng turned to the doctor around him and ordered him to sit down in the room, quietly looking at the flowers on the street, treating Mahjong. A person is extremely charming when he is serious, and the flowers on the street are just like this in Yan Beicheng's eyes. Her concentrated eyebrows and eyes, as well as fingertip flying action, fell in his eyes, all like with a special magic in the eyes of the general, extraordinary demagogic mind. Mo Shanghua's whole mind is immersed in the treatment of the patient at the moment, and doesn't notice Yin Beiqing's eyes at all. So busy enough to have nearly 2 hours of time, while Ma Jiang pulled back from the ghost door. Feed him the medicine, and he should wake up one night later. You should prepare some light food like porridge in advance, so that he won't be too hungry when he wakes up. Mo Shanghua wiped the sweat on his forehead and told the soldiers behind him. All the soldiers nodded their heads like garlic, and there was no prejudice against the flowers on the street. Mo Shanghua was about to go out when he saw Yin Beicheng sitting at the table in the room, holding his chin and looking at her attentively. When did you come back? Mo Shanghua, eyebrow tip light, pick a few minutes, some surprise looking at Yin North City. While you were treating General Mo, Yin Beicheng slowly stood up, took her hand and walked out. I think you've been busy just now, but you haven't eaten yet. I'll take you to dinner. The flowers on the street were pulled by Yin Beicheng, and he had to follow him at his feet. But looking at the weather outside, I couldn't help wondering, this evening, where can I have a meal? Ah, you won't kill someone to get up and cook in the middle of the night. Yin Beicheng looked back helplessly and raised her hand on her forehead. My princess, it's in the city now. There are restaurants outside. Mo Shanghua touched Yin Beicheng's forehead, and later he realized, I forgot. As soon as the voice fell, the whole person was dragged forward by Yin Beicheng. This time, she was still in a daze. Suddenly, she was dragged forward by Yin Beicheng and touched her wound. She suddenly can't help but take a breath. Willow, eyebrow, tightly frown. What's the matter? Such a subtle voice. Yin Beicheng, or immediately in the ear, busy looked back to see Mo hurt. See her left hand is covering by his right arm. Frown tight wrinkle appearance. Immediately reaction. Can't help but chagrin patted his head. The king unexpectedly forgot your injury. Is it hurt you? The wound has no problem. Do you want to go back to have a look? Mo Shanghua shook his head, eyebrows stretched out. Nothing, just pulled. However, as soon as her voice fell, she felt that she was light, and that she had been swept up by Yanbei City. Yanbei City, what are you going to do? Put me down at this time, although it was late, there were still some people on the street. Yin Beicheng's embrace attracted the attention of pedestrians. Yin Beicheng didn't care. Instead of letting go, he swaggered up on the street with her in his arms. If they like to see it, I just want to take my princess to dinner. Between words, it's all spoiling. Mo Shanghua stares at Yin Beicheng with endless tender eyes for a moment. The defense line in his heart seems to be completely relaxed at the moment, and his heart is completely soft. Women are such strange creatures. Sometimes they don't need any dynamism. They may just be the details of their life, which may make their heart turn into a hole. As a matter of fact, Yin Beicheng had already arranged in the restaurant. When the flowers came, the waiter rushed forward to meet them and took them to the elegant room on the second floor. The small kitchen downstairs was also urging them to cook. Not long after they arrived, they cooked hot meals in the kitchen and sent them to the elegant room in turn, with a full table of various delicacies. Yin Beicheng took a bowl of soup and put it in front of Mo Shanghua. He said, if you have a wound, you should make up for it. Well, you can't get used to the military food these days. Come on, eat more. While talking, he took another bowl and kept putting all kinds of food in it. I'm not that. Mo Shanghua was about to retort, and then he changed his mouth as if he suddenly thought of something. He said, I don't have such a big appetite. You caught so much. I'm afraid I can't finish it. She wanted to say that she was not so coquettish. In her previous life, she had suffered more when she was carrying out tasks. What she had done a few days ago was nothing. However, she thought that Yin Beicheng was full of good intentions at the moment. When she said this, she changed her mind by pouring cold water on him again. Yin North City flat mouth, extremely childish mouth. Can't finish eating then left. This king doesn't care, anyway don't allow and clip back. The flower on the street saw this, and suddenly it was helpless and funny. I just eat. As soon as she took a few mouthfuls of rice at the entrance, she couldn't help pausing for a moment. She solidified her face and asked, I just saw General Mo, but I don't know if Han Xianxiu and his party can find him. Yin Beicheng dropped his head to get a small glass of wine for himself and said in a heavy voice, when our king led the troops to support, Han Xianfeng was ambushed by the mob, and he had already returned to the Yellow Spring. But fortunately, before our king left, the 500 mobs had time to evacuate, and we had avenged them. The idea now is that Yin Moli hid the 500 people, and they should have been wiped out by him. As for Han Xianxiu sent by Yin Moli, they have also been disposed of. Mo Shanghua understood Yin Beicheng's meaning, so she didn't go on questioning. She just thought of the rebellion in Anzhou and asked again, what's the state of Anzhou now? I asked Qin Lin when I woke up. He said that there was no news yet. Referring to this matter, the clear color of Yu King in Yin Beicheng's eyes faded a little and dyed a layer of dark color. Maureen. He suddenly put down his chopsticks, raised his voice slightly, spewed 2 words in the room without expression, and couldn't see where he was looking. The next second, Maureen appeared in front of him. I understand. With that, his figure flashed again, and in a twinkling of an eye, there was no trace in the house. However, there were a few more breaths around the small house, obviously to prevent eavesdropping. With this layer of protection, Yinbei City had no scruples, but Mianwu did not return to the cold and indifferent state when he was a cloaker, but his eyes were darker than usual. According to my information, the people in Anzhou have already surrendered. Mo Shanghua's face was dyed with surprise. What how? Yin Beicheng explained patiently. According to the information just inquired from Hua Qianlu, Yin Moli's plan is to attack the 4 gates of east, west, north, and south, and Yin Moli's plan is to attack the 4 gates of east, west, north, and south. Yin Moli's plan is to attack the 4 gates of east, west, north, and south, and Yin Moli's plan is to attack the 4 gates of south. He was not there at the beginning. He left a stand-in there to attack. As for the east gate, it's just a small fight, it's just that there were not many casualties at all. The generals sent by the west gate were too useless, and soon they were defeated. This led to the opportunity for the mob to send troops to the north city. After a pause, his eyes suddenly crossed a bit dark. But except for Shiman, other casualties are not big. The mob side is also defeated. The mob side, there is no gate to use the same way as the north city. As for their surrender, it was half an hour after our withdrawal. There are still 4,000 people left in the city who have been captured. Mo Shanghua's quiet eyes can't help but scratch a cold color, and the temperature on his face also faded a bit. The barracks said it was burned, but it's nothing at all, right? Yin Beicheng nodded and took a sip of the wine to his lips. He said, not bad. Mo Shanghua's palm is slightly tightened, and his face is full of frost. He has left many back roads for himself. The purpose of sending someone to send false news is to design a way to harm Yin Beicheng. Even if he gets away with it, he doesn't have to be afraid to confront him. He just needs to say that the man is a mob pretending to be. As for the delay in sending troops to save Yin Beicheng after the capture of Anzhou, it can also be explained that Yin Beicheng's whereabouts are unknown and they are not allowed to inform. Every success or failure, he has prepared the success and failure of the method. The mind is really meticulous, incomparable. Yin Beicheng's deep eyes crossed with a touch of irony. He is smart, and he is defeated in the end. But now, I still have a puzzle. I want to talk with you. Without waiting for Yin Beicheng to say it, he turned his eyebrows and eyes. Then he had a number in his heart and said, if I guess well, it should be the matter of the 1,000 soldiers. Yin Beicheng's delicate chin is tiny, and the corners of his lips are slightly raised. The princess is really smart. The flowers on the street did not respond. They dropped their eyes and thought quietly. The long, curly eyelashes, which were like a fan, trembled a few times from time to time, and the dark color in their eyes seemed to change with it. For a long time, she looked up at Yin Beicheng with a look on her face. Yin Moli disappeared there before, and more than 1,000 people seemed to evaporate in the world. But now they came out of thin air, disguised as a mob, and wanted to kill people with a knife. But when I think about it, I always feel that it's not a trick of killing people with a knife at all, but it's the hands of the mob. Yin Beicheng didn't move his eyebrows. He didn't have much surprise on his face. It seemed that he had thought of this layer for a long time. Do you suspect that Yin Beicheng is colluding with the mobs? I think about it, and I really can't think of any place where so many people can be hidden. Now, when I think about it carefully, it's the only place that is the most suitable one within 100 miles. The flower on the street is staring at the mouth slowly, and the words are well-founded. Another point is that in order to expand the number of people, the mobs have been trying to capture the people around them. This will only make the imperial court worried about the large number of mobs. As for why the mobs can capture so many people in a short period of time, and their force is not low, no one will have the leisure to study. Thinking of this, the flower eyes on the street could not help but scoff. In order to kill you, he really tried his best, but I don't understand. It is well known that His Highness King Yu is a dandy who only knows how to eat, drink, and play. Why does he have to work hard to kill you? This has always been the case in the struggle for the throne. Even if there is a slight possibility of succeeding, it may be a threat in the future. Yin North City, Mao color, faint enunciation. Mao inside, not too big emotion fluctuation. However, I poor have more bold speculation. The eyebrows on the street are gently raised, and the color of curiosity floats in the eyes, just like a pair of ears. Yin Beicheng's eyes darkened a little, and his face became a little solemn. He said, "Did you ever think that the reason why the rioters started to make trouble was that the grain merchants of Wujuan didn't send grain, which led to a large number of people's 5 grains to eat, and then they escaped? But Wujuan was just a small county in Yuzhou. Where could so many people go out to make trouble? Moreover, the most important thing is that the gathering speed of these people is too fast, but in a short period of 1 month, they have so many people, and their combat effectiveness is not weak." After a pause, he raised his hand and dipped some wine in the wine cup. He took the bowl and chopsticks in front of him to one side for a while and drew a few simple graffiti on the table between his fingers. "I asked people to check that the place where they first made trouble was in the east, and then gradually spread from the east. The distance from the east to Anzhou was not as close as Liangsheng, and Liangsheng was still far away from the border. He said, why is it that they are not contaminated by poverty?" Yin Beicheng's words are like the traction power in his eyes. With his guidance, these clues are like the beginning and the end, which are gradually connected in his mind. It's like this. It's like this. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she was. Her eyes were full of surprise. "Do you mean that the disaster of the mob is Yin Mo Li's play from beginning to end?" He did not dare to put his hand in Yuzhou too much because there were many imperial cities in Yuzhou. The risk was too high. If he found out that it was a crime of death, he would be very cautious. The purpose of his doing this is nothing more than to raise the level of the world at present. However, when he was old, he could not get a reward from the emperor, so he wanted to make meritorious contributions in order to win the title of king and land. Before Lenovo, he sneaked into Yuzhou and wanted to fight for the place where the weapons were made. I'm afraid it was also for the sake of winning the fiefdom in the future. Fortunately, he secretly trained his troops on the fiefdom and made full preparations for the future struggle for the throne. Maybe he had something to do with the food merchants in Wujuan. There's always something wrong with the previous things. Now, after such a series, everything is completely clear. Yin Beicheng dropped his eyes to wipe the wine stains on the table, changed a wine cup, and poured a cup for himself again. Then he said, "His play is very good. Those innocent people in Yuzhou's troops are all real. He has consumed a lot." The flower eyes on the street seemed to be wrapped with ice, half cold, half ironic, and a bit tricky to have such a strong opponent. Every piece of what he has done has to be counted in it. If you can get everything you want, what's the point? Yin Beicheng, however, was not satisfied. His eyes vaguely showed a kind of happy, rising color like a match. There is no exact evidence for this matter at present, so I will help him remember it first, and I will settle it with him in the future. However, his eyebrows were tightly wrinkled, and he was not half relaxed. But this trip, Yuzhou lost so many troops. When said, there is no worry in the north of the city, but it is a relaxed state. This move is only profitable for us. In the past few years, Yuzhou has been filled with the eyelid of the imperial city. The past is that the timing is not ripe, and there is no suitable time. It has been kept. Now, he is also given a good opportunity. Yuzhou is located on the border, and its strength must not be short. It's too much. Just give me a discount and ask for recruitment. The emperor won't disagree. It's his father, but he just uses the name of emperor. His eyes are cool and plain, as if he is used to calling the emperor when there is no one. Although she was not the original owner of the body, in the final analysis, Immerse Shanghua was also a person who had been betrayed by her family. She had some understanding of this kind of emotion, so she didn't ask any more questions. She just nodded thoughtfully. So it seems that we could go back to Yuzhou now, just by waiting for Yin Moli in Liangsheng to send the news of conquering Anzhou. That's nature. After talking about the important things, Yanbei's city turned into the wanton King Yu of the old days, drinking with his wine cup. Immerse Shanghua was injured and couldn't drink, so she had a quiet meal next to him. For a moment, they also had a sense of tranquility. The next day, their analysis came true. Early in the morning, when he was killed yesterday, Yuzhou, who could not find out anything, came the news, saying that the mobs in Yuzhou could not resist, but had surrendered, captured 2,000 mobs, took down Anzhou city, and Yin Moli had already stationed in the city. Did your second highness say, what should we do now? Immerse Shanghua looked at the soldiers kneeling in the corridor and asked softly. The soldier bowed his head and said truthfully, return to the princess. Your highness has ordered, saying that he will deal with the remnant. Now the prince and princess can return to Yuzhou by themselves. The bottom of the flower eyes on the street was a little dark, but there was no difference on the face. He only said, I know, you can step back. Yin Beiqing sat leisurely on the corridor for a moment. Seeing that the messenger had gone far away, he said slowly, does the princess think that we should go back now? On the street, his eyes drooped slightly. He seemed to be thinking about something, but for a moment, he raised them again. Let's go to Anzhou. When Yin Moli received the news that flowers from the city of Yanbei had come to Anzhou, the gloom in his eyes immediately overflowed. Where are they now? The person who replied raised his eyes to see Yin Moli and spoke very carefully. Your Highness, you have been invited to the hall. Do you want to inform General Zhang that they will go there together? For a long time, Yin Moli just pressed down the gloom in his eyes and said, no, I'm going to pass. When Yin Moli arrived in the main hall, Yin Beiqing and Immerse Shanghua had been waiting for a long time. He quickly apologized and said, let the emperor's younger brother and the princess wait for a long time. We'll take tea instead of wine in our hall and punish ourselves with a cup. Then he took up the tea on the table and drank it. Seeing this, Yin Beiqing also stood up and said with a smile, Brother Huang, this is the way to see the outside world. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.